3, 2, 1.
Hello, viewers, and welcome
here to another exciting Captain Series at Fight the Tide. I am Korvac, alongside me, Ishka and Log today as we get ready to jump into this event where experienced players help those slightly less experienced learn new difficulties, understand new maps, figure out some new strategies. There's been a lot of build up to this. We had a ton of signups here, some of our, I think, most signups ever, and a bunch of little university classes as well for you guys to better learn the game, all building up, of course, to today where we're going to have 3 hours of gameplay of teams learning some set map pools, and then, of course, tomorrow we'll be back with more teams, more learning. That's what it's all about here today. Anyway, as I said, I'm Korvac, alongside me, Ishka and Locke. Guys, so happy to be with you here today as we get going on this broadcast.
Yeah, happy to be here. Oh, go ahead, please.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying thank you for the introduction, and, you know, Captain Series, it's that time of year. It's one of the most exciting times of year in the Verm community, right? I mean, this is just, I think, one of my favorite events to participate in, to shoutcast, everything.
Absolutely. I look forward to this. I look forward to seeing the teams. I look forward to seeing the community come together. Look forward to having all sorts of brilliant minds come in and talk all things Verm. Real quick, I want to shout out to organizers, to volunteers, to everyone who's put so much time into this, and that extends to captains, that extends to players, that extends to everybody. Thank you so much for being here and putting in the type of effort so we can see some really hardcore Verm.
Some really hardcore Verm. That's good.
Some really hardcore Verm. That's a good way to put it. Yeah, we kind of explained, I guess, the format of the event here for you guys is that we do have kind of teams playing across multiple maps here over the course of a couple of hours, 3 hours to be exact. So we'll get to see a lot of action here today, and then more action tomorrow. Guys, is there anything you wanted to throw in here about kind of the event and what it means and what we should expect?
Yeah, so I can explain quite a lot of the format here. So, first of all, if you don't know what modded Vermintide is, let me just get you up to speed. So, on modded Realm, we thought official Realm was just a little bit too easy. So we introduced some mods, often things called Death Wish, or Cataclysm 3, or Onslaught, which all make the game harder in certain ways, and I can explain those mods in a little bit. But I would say it's substantially harder than official Realm. And what we do, since it's kind of a difficulty spike to get into, is we have this community event called the Captain Series, where if you're a player who's really interested in learning modded from someone who's experienced, someone who has thousands of hours and is a friendly person who will hold your hand through, dying 10 times on Righteous Stand before you make it through that mid-event or something, that's what this event is for. So one experienced captain is assigned 4 players who are playing on a difficulty that they want to try out. There's 3 difficulties we offer, and I'll explain how they work in a little bit. And they only had 2 weeks to get in shape. So all these players here would have died on the very first horde 2 weeks ago, you know? So I think every time we see a team, even surviving, making it deep into the map, or clearing the map, it's a huge accomplishment, it's a huge improvement, and this is very hard Vermintide. So.
Well, that's an excellent summary.
And as much as I'm sure you guys want to stare at my beautiful face, and now I've got some double audio coming through, but don't worry, we're working on it. Let's go ahead and jump into one of our teams here. We have, I believe this is under Johnny.
Let's pull them up. Looks like they're doing the start of Athelorn, which is always a challenging spot, guys.
Oh gosh, this map, so much harder than it is on official Realm, because the map is designed for you to walk through it, right? You're not really supposed to fight a lot in the map. It's supposed to be pretty and you walk through it. But on Onslaught, there's a lot more hordes and they're very dense. So you actually have to fight in like the very starting area for quite some time and things like that, which is very bizarre, I will say. It doesn't feel right to be fighting 7 hordes in this first area or something like that. I did promise to explain the mods, so I should get that out of the way real quick. So every single team is going to be playing with something called Death Wish. This means that enemies can't be staggered by normal means. The mass is increased massively on a lot of enemies. So this means that you can't just walk up and shove a storm vermin and have them be staggered. You can't just fire sword 10 storm vermin in a corner and not get hit. They won't care. They won't get staggered. They will hit you anyways. So this generally reduces the amount of space you have. Some teams will be playing on Cataclysm 1, which is the base Cataclysm kind of modifier that you might be used to on Official Realm. Some teams will be playing on Cataclysm 3, which is a modifier that's introduced in Weaves. So it increases the cap of the number of specials you can possibly have. And it also like basically almost doubles most enemy health. So especially bosses, I think is where you're really bosses and special breakpoints is where you're really going to notice it. Um, and then lastly, some teams are playing on Onslaught, and some teams are playing on Onslaught Plus. Onslaught jacks up the number of hordes that you can get and makes their compositions always have elites in them. Because in Official Realm, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, elites are mostly ambients that are pulled into the horde, and you might get some in the horde, but it's pretty few. So you're going to get lots of elites, lots of hordes that come in 3 waves, and also every single trigger in the map. So this is where you could get a boss, patrol, whatever, is active. So if you get to a certain area in a map where a boss usually could occur, it will always occur. So that means that you're guaranteed to fight 2 bosses in a patrol or 2 patrols in a boss, which is definitely a difficulty spike because remember, those hordes are coming in fast. So it's very unlikely that you're going to have just the boss or just the patrol. So very exciting, lot going on. There's a number of other things that are changed too, but I think that's really all you need to know.
So when you tie in all of that information, and especially like you said, this is 2 weeks time, and the first map you get to choose here is to play in is Athol, which even in live feels like it's designed the very beginning. A lot of it is to punish you. It's tight around corners. Here comes those storms. We know it's going to be harder, like you said, to stagger them. Now it is nice to use that ledge, right? Can we talk about that? Why would you want to use a ledge or a climbing animation to your advantage?
So if enemies have to pass through a ledge, then they're in the stagger state when they're climbing a ledge, so you get extra damage against them. And also they can't hit you. So it's much easier to frontline because you don't have to worry about like creating space for your team to shoot them or making sure that they aren't going to running attack through you or whatever. Like they're just not really doing anything during that time. They're essentially, flash banged or whatever. And I think one interesting thing to note about Athel is they've kind of already cleared what I feel like is one of the hardest parts of the map, which is actually that first hill drop down. A lot of teams, when they're pubbing, will wipe on that first drop down. And this team has made it through, so it's a little bit easier, but the difficulty's not totally gone because this whole area here is a nasty trigger. So it's very easy to say get a boss in this area and then a horde and then have to back up and have basically nowhere to go because you're fighting from 2 sides and you're basically inside a canyon with no way out. Also on Athel, when teams die, the respawns are brutal, more brutal than almost any other map in the game, because they're very, very far away. Because again, the devs expected you to walk through a large portion of this map, and you can't now. So
Talk to me about deaths a little bit. I feel like there might be a misconception, especially with like, okay, you're playing on modded, you're playing Cata 1, Death Wish, Onslaught, right? You can't die. That might be a misconception, no?
well, I mean, you can the dying and respawning mechanics are the same as the base game. It's just that when there's more enemies, it's harder to progress through the map to force a respawn. And when there's Death Wish on, you can't just shove enemies out of the way. It means you can't just stand on top of the teammate who needs to be revived and just like shove away some stuff and revive them. Like, the enemies will start hitting you and breaking your block and all sorts of things. So, um, when I say that dying is punishing and you can't die, what I mean is really just that the respawns are terrible and the hordes are fast enough such that you're going to be sitting out for a long time, unfortunately. And that's just the nature of this map.
Okay, yes. So the pressure is felt when you go from 3 to 4 or even 2 or 1. You really get to feel that pressure. Um, Talk to me about, let's see. You actually covered a lot because like, okay, there's some things I don't want to call them bad habits, but it's a mind shift, right? Okay, I can't just res you in front of the enemies. You know, if I'm not an Iron Breaker, if I don't have a ton, if I don't have a shout, right? Like I can't just res you um all the time. I need to figure out a way to create the space because that additional pressure is immediate when someone goes down.
Hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, if there's like three storm vermin camping your body, again, they can't be staggered normally. So if you want to like res your teammate and get them out of the way, you need like a shout, you need like a battle wizard ult, you might even need a bomb, um now I think it is one thing where, you know, really experienced players are very good at finding clever ways to get reses off when they kind of shouldn't. So it's definitely kind of a skill that gets improved on over time. But I think at this level where teams have, really just been playing for about 2 weeks, I kind of expect to see either multiple people helping out the res or, some investment used like a Merc shout or something like that. Um, so far they're doing pretty good. They're actually plowing through what is one of the hardest parts of the map. They didn't seem to get a trigger unless I missed it, which is a big deal. I think the triggers in that first area there are quite nasty. Um, and this open area up front has a bit more room to um, kite a boss if you need to, or come up with a plan. You're not as cramped, and the special angles are trash, but at least you can avoid them.
So at a
Yeah, I was just
oh, sorry, Ishka, I didn't mean to go
no,
in over
please
you
go
there,
ahead.
but at a certain point in time, and by the way, do let me know, chat, if I'm still double audioing. It's all a bit arcane back here, to be honest. At a certain point in time, I can also bring in the audio for the team. It's just a little bit of the Wild West there in terms of what we're gonna get for content, but it might help us understand the communications a little bit. Are they? They were looking. They're pathing to go pick up the tome. I don't think you need to do that, guys. I know there's more to it than that, but it always looks like that to me. I mean, when you're, and Lonk, we have your team in this as well. I need to see if we can get one of their feeds so we can bring them in. But just as a captain, if players are interested in improving on their kind of their abilities or what have you, where do you go for the idea of like, oh, I want to play this specific character, even though or this specific class, let's say, even though it may not kind of be optimal.
I mean, you won't be motivated to get better at the game if you're not enjoying it, right? So you should play what you enjoy playing, to the degree that it works. And it might be harder to figure out how to play a class that's, say, off meta or something like that. But it's certainly not a big enough barrier usually to, um, prevent you from having fun and prevent you
Sure.
from learning a lot of the same principles. Sometimes, if a team's really struggling and changing the comp would just make it easier, I might suggest that. At least early on as well, I'm often suggest sort of trying like sort of a very fixed comp that's easy to diagnose problems, just so that teams can sort of understand better like what they did wrong. Um, Comps that have clear rules, because often when you have four people just like quick playing careers, the rules can be a little confusing. And I think when things are really segmented into like a backline, front line, and potentially a midline career, then when you're learning the game, you can better understand like, okay, this is what backlining is like, this is what frontlining is like, and adjust from there. So
And
looks
I'm
like
gonna
they
take
do have a boss here, actually. This is a very good place to take a boss, one of the best places to take a boss, and they got a Rat Ogre, which is one of the easier bosses, as you can see, because they can just dodge dance it. The Rat Ogre has fixed attack patterns as long as you get very close. Um, and looks like there's not even a horde up right now, so they've timed this trigger pretty well. That's a big part of playing Onslaught, is you want to make sure you walk into the trigger with the maximum amount of time possible to kill the boss or whatever. Because like an ambush or horde could be coming in basically any moment, and I think that was super clean right there. I'm sure whoever was coaching them would be super proud. That was a very clean trigger.
Yeah, no, that was really well handled, honestly.
hardly broke a sweat on that. I mean, you kind of mentioned obviously Athelorn. It's a bit grindy, like you said. Designers kind of made it with the intent that players would walk through it. And you can't walk through it as easily when you're getting bombarded by, bosses, hordes, what have you. When you're trying to kind of like, I guess, map out a map, for lack of a better word, get these trigger points, get the idea where like you're gonna have to stand. What does that process kind of look like? Is it a literal walkthrough, where you have like a first person, somebody playing and you perspective and you just lead people through a map?
Don't bring in that negativity.
Yeah, so I think different teams do it differently. Me personally, I tend to just assign homework because there's a really good YouTube series by the user Cooley, who's gone through and shown with the level debug every single trigger on the map very carefully, and so you can go through and see like exactly where a boss or patrol could spawn, like where the spheres are that you walk into, and from there you should be able to learn your triggers. I usually give players a heads up which areas tend to have triggers, but sometimes there's something like, 10 triggers in a certain area, and I think the information overload could be a little overwhelming in the first 2 weeks, so I just tend to tell them, like, this is where you need to be very careful. But that's just my coaching style. I tend to personally emphasize, like, you shouldn't need to memorize strats for every single map. If you sort of learn the fundamentals, the principles, you'll be able to derive a lot of the strats that are used commonly. It's sort of like I want to teach you to derive the formula rather than, recite the formula. If that makes sense.
Let's go to where Johnny is. What about where Johnny is?
It
Well,
does.
I feel like
it
that
does make
takes
sense. Go ahead, Isha.
get the information given and apply it to your current situation. And when you say it's about not necessarily like memorizing things, I like that, but if you say, hey, we have 2 weeks, we're going to train on this, we have 4 maps, and very early on you said, they're going to dive to that first wave. Every step you take, you take from the rats, is a way to learn. So if you approach it in that sense, like, hey, I'm getting better for my team composition, how my team plays beyond composition, how is everyone like, mind games gutter runner winning the game, how it, what does my career do with other careers? And then when you play with other people, you build a rapport with them, right? Like any other game that is team based. What can you rely on your team to do, in even as a group sense and as an individual sense? And as you continue to build on those skills, you see yourself progress through maps.
It's not bad.
Yeah, absolutely. And the team play, the roles are huge. I mean, what you said there, you kind of mentioned it briefly, but I really want to highlight it. Because in Official Realm, right, you can just load up Cat Quick Play on, say, Foot Knight or something and get top damage, top specials, top elites, whatever. Like if you're have more skill than the lobby, you'll just be able to get green circles and everything and just basically solo carry the game. And there's just not enough enemies for there really to make sense to employ different roles. Team comp isn't really something that you should worry about too much. On this difficulty, though, like having a dedicated, someone who's dedicated backline, someone who's dedicated frontline, or even just lots of communication, if that's not necessarily the team comp you have, is really critical. Because it's no longer the case that you can just sit there as like mercenary Kruber and kill every single special with handgun. It's just not going to happen. And so being able to play as a team and understanding what your role is really huge. And I think this gets even more emphasized the harder the game gets. So, right now this team's playing on C1 Dwans, and they're running a kind of, an interesting comp, you could say. Like, it doesn't really have like a, it has some duplicated frontline careers, doesn't really have a hard backline, but it has a lot of sustain, and so it should be able to just kind of tank through problems. But like, if you, say, tried to bring this comp into Dutch Spicy or something, which is not shown in this event, it would be a little bit difficult, because as the game gets harder, you need to sort of lock into different roles more. It just becomes better to have one person take over a certain job and another person take over another job, and the
Is it just
trust
spawning
of
full of
your
us and too
teammates
many of
is
us that
really
ram
big
into the
too.
backyard?
Developing
Like
trust for
full
your
stock
fellow
units?
players. Trust that you have a Waystalker that will shoot those specials.
That's why it looks
Trust
not
that you
full.
have an Ironbreaker who's going to taunt at the right times.
Behind?
Those kinds of things, and that's also part of why the 2 weeks you spend time sort of learning the body language of your team and learning you know how they play, how to capitalize on the decisions they
Start
make.
taking
So
care of some of the stragglers.
Makes a lot of sense, honestly. And then I'm looking at our teams here. Obviously, we have, I think, about 9 teams on display here today. We'll have more teams tomorrow.
Yeah, we can
We're gonna go ahead and try getting more, getting some of the captains in
push
here
towards
in
that ammo that's
just
in
a
our main
minute.
base 6 then.
I'm gonna go take a look right now. Here's a team that was, I believe, coached by Chance. Let's see if I can get them in.
Thank you.
Just got to adjust something for you guys right here because I don't want to block out. I don't want to block out player pictures. I want to make sure that everybody can see the names of the players and who's playing what. So we'll transition over to them here. They're on. It looks like the pit, so they're actually quite a ways into the pit. Which is good. We'll come back to
yeah,
Johnny later and make sure that he gets a chance to talk about a team, but we're going to try and get no pun intended. We're trying to get Chance in here to talk about in just a second.
Ooh, here comes the Chaos Spawn.
Oh, just
Ooh,
in time for a
yes.
boss spawn.
Grail
That's good
Knight
timing.
straight in for that half health, just a couple of minutes, seconds in.
oh yeah, it gets
Oh,
shredded.
done. Yeah, I'll be honest with you. One of my biggest fears in this game is fighting on stairs. I cannot stand fighting on stairs, and they took that fight beautifully.
It's not just you. Enemy hitboxes are very confusing on stairs. So like one thing that might be eye-opening is there's a mod that highlights like all the hitboxes of attacks. Um, and if you stand on stairs, you'll notice that a lot of things go like well below where they kind of should, or well above where they kind of should. And if they're things that kind of never matter when you're fighting on flat ground, because like it's going into the floor or something like that. But on stairs, the devs really wanted them to not miss you, to be able to reach you. So they reach you all right. um,
Stairs, or when you got a ladder, you're like, I got this ladder. I have like a second on this ladder. There's no way they're gonna hit me up here. They're doing an overhead swing. They're attacking down. They shouldn't be able to hit me, and they catch you every time. Maybe I just have bad luck.
mm, ladders are dangerous. I think ladders are important to like use a shout, to use some sort of ultimate or stagger if there's a lot of enemies around, because I don't trust it. Uh, yeah, I might feel like I'm safe, even though there's a bunch of enemies chasing me. But when I'm slowly climbing and I can't block, um, I usually just go ahead and pop the ult just to be sure. Because dying on a ladder it feels
Oh,
terrible.
some of the most disrespectful ways the rats can kill you.
Coming up to the mid event here, mid event is very interesting on Pit. So, one thing I forgot to mention with Onslaught is that all the events have been juiced up and in a customized way. So, every event has been sort of hand customized by,
Oh,
whoever created Onslaught. And, they find some way to make it harder or make it uh, a little bit more complicated to complete the objective. So on the pit here, we expect to see a lot of waves. They might be, trying to hold out a bit more enemies than usual, or even do a kite if there's too many enemies. So I think we
Well,
have Chance here now, right?
we do, yeah. We're gonna bring in Chance. Hey, Chance, welcome. Let's make sure you're all good. There's only so much you can do. Happy to have you with us to talk about your team.
Thanks, guys. How are you doing today? Yeah, so I coached these guys for 2 weeks. I actually just want to give a quick shout out to Plasma 196 who covered me for 2 days while I was uh, unable to be there as a coach. But yeah, I'm happy to be here and happy to have this event. This event's long overdue.
Awesome. Well, obviously, we're more than happy to have you join us here. So, obviously, you guys is his Cattle One Death Wish Onslaught. What was kind of the starting point for you working through the training of the team here? Like, where did you begin with these guys?
So I believe Lonk and I have similar coaching preferences where I teach them basically the fundamentals. Like, you have a horde timer you're basically racing against all the time. You have to pick spots in which you can survive. And the first thing I basically learned with them or taught with them was the concept of linearization, essentially the idea of making sure there's no enemies behind you. I say is there we're watching Grail Knight here, but still, my the thing about this team that they never really struggled with was communication. And I think that's one of the most important things in modded difficulties Vermintide is communication and being open and speaking and that sort of thing.
Right, and that in and of itself, I feel like is maybe a bit of a hard thing to teach.
Tied
It's
on a ladder. We were
I
unfortunate that we
talking about
know.
brought
it.
you in
I
right when
Oh,
it all
know.
went. Right when it all went, all pear shaped on us here, but it's bound to happen, I guess. That's actually good. We'll use this as a learning opportunity. So, like when a wipe happens, right, like it does in this case, what do you kind of talk to the team about? How do you walk through? Like, what's the post mortem on everybody getting wiped out?
Sure. One of my favorite ways to handle team wipes is I like to ask them, okay, what went wrong here? What do you guys think went wrong here? And then I'll try to gauge how they feel. Maybe they believe it's a comp issue. Maybe they believe it's uh, like a horde timer mishap or they had an early trigger pull. I kind of like to allow them to explore it themselves. And if they have absolutely no idea, then I'm happy to explain, like, okay, so you went a little slow here. Perhaps you could have used your resources better, that sort of thing. I'd like to just point out the individual things that I felt like could have gone better for them. And I don't like to hardcore backseat them too much, especially with this team because they pretty educated already. They watched every Onslaught University course and all of that, so they were very dedicated to learn.
Can I ask, when you get to that point, the post death analysis, do you, and this is also a question to any other captains in chat, do you do it in real time? Are you recording, like doing a screen record and be like, okay, let's go back and watch the replay? Or are you just kind of like in the mind right then and there to talk about it?
I'm of the mind that it's best to talk about it when it's fresh on their minds.
Okay.
I actually do this with events as well. If they have what you may call a sloppy event, I'll ask them to pause before they continue the map and say, okay, what could we have done better there? And what do you guys think about that event?
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious. Just other games that I know that have caused me high stress would be something like StarCraft 2, any sort of hero defense game where I'll be watching and be like, what was my economy? Well, in this game, it'd be like, what did you have potions? Did you have bombs? Did you have healing? What was your positioning? Were your alt up? What career are you? And so that's just like, that's cool that you're able to do that in the mind live right there.
Yeah, I mean, everything you said is super vital and importance or and important. And just reading the chat really quickly, like, yeah, I hard agree that recording your own gameplay is super good. I ask my players to do that if they want to. So then I will watch their gameplay and try to fix some minor mistakes because I typically like to watch the first person POV rather than use a mod to follow them. I think it's a fine way to coach that way. I just think that fixing the minor individual mishaps is super important. At the very least, at basic C1 Dwans for sure.
Right, and
So
that.
another, oh, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead, Isha. Take it away.
Just another question. In terms of like your team, it sounded like it was important to kind of like their mindset and where they were. Can you talk about maybe like a mental shift they had to do going from like base game to Dwan's? You did say that they were very active and participated in the university that we held this past week leading up to this. So that's really good to hear. And then could you also talk about maybe like choosing this team composition for these players?
Sure. Okay, so okay, regarding the team composition, I asked them, and thanks to Janoti, shout out for him for sure, is he gathered players together who kind of can draft like the right comps for most things modded related, long covered like roles that are kind of needing to be filled at this difficulty. So I asked them what characters are you comfortable to play, that sort of thing, and I drafted their comps accordingly for that. Um, Regarding Mindshift, I had to really, really hammer in the idea of specials priority wise. Like, if you're holding a Blightstormer or a Gas Rat is more dangerous than, say, a Fire Rat that's not even close to you yet. Um, and then the idea of why holding spots are good. So they got to learn a lot about the game, about spawn locations, and that sort of thing.
Excellent. Okay.
I mean, did you
And
kind of encounter any significant problems though during this process? Was there like something that just, hey, everybody's really struggling with, one particular issue on the team that you had to work through? Like, was there a particular challenge or even boss or anything like that?
oh yeah, for sure. The biggest thing they had to work on as a team was the concept of healing, the concept of THP regeneration. We draft some AoE a lot, so when the Hagbane Waystalker is unloading into the wave of Skaven, the stagger battle wizard, for example, is unable to gen THP. So I had to tell them like a big thing you need to do in this difficulty is look at each other's health bar. You need to communicate like I want to gen some THP here and that sort of thing. Definitely the concept of healing was something I had to go over with them more than a few times.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think that's, it's a bit of a confusing concept, especially if you're not sort of particularly familiar with, I guess, how things work at this difficulty level. Um, in a more, I think, generalized sense, like what do you generally tend to, trying to think of a good way to put this, what do you generally tend to kind of emphasize for players when it comes to kind of understanding individual maps? Like, where does that process begin? Say, understanding the pit, learning the triggers. Like, how do you go about that?
So uh, initially I had them just play the map and see if they, because a couple of my players said we've studied a lot of these triggers and that sort of thing. So I kind of wanted to put that to the test for them a little bit. After their first attempt, I talk about areas and typically how a lot of modded players will play them. A big thing for me is I don't only like to give my perspective on things like hold spots and that sort of thing. I try to give them as much information as I can. I'll say, I don't particularly use this hold spot, but that doesn't mean it's not good. You should do what works for you. I teach them, most importantly, respawn locations and triggers. I think that's just a very, very fundamental mechanic for modded is if you do die, like Long said, it's very punishing sometimes. So getting ways to trivialize or get around that punishment is very, very handy to know.
I see that makes a lot of sense. I mean, this is a bit of a silly question. It's not something that we've necessarily seen, though. I guess we did see a little bit of it, just when this last run ended. But do you ever train like a clutch? Like, can you train a clutch scenario, or is that not just like not a thing?
I emphasize or I wholeheartedly support the idea of clutching. I basically only have them restart if they're still learning a hold and they don't know how to play it very well and two people have died. I'll say you can go ahead and restart. I'll tell them why, because you guys need to learn this hold. They come from here, here, and here. But and when I watch them go and play their run for a clear, I tend to not speak as much. I tend to watch them and I tell them like, do your best to play it out as if you were on broadcast day or tourney day, if that's your kind of ambition to play in a tournament. Because clutch moments, especially in high level Vermintide, are some of the most like pounding, entertaining adrenaline rush you can get.
Oh,
I
definitely.
love
Well,
that. I absolutely agree.
yeah, I
It's
think.
funny because as a coach, I have a slightly different philosophy because I feel like if you're clutching, something went wrong, and I like want to avoid having players in clutch scenarios as much as possible. You know, like we try to develop like clutch proof methods of getting through areas so that You know, even if you're getting through slowly, you have 4 people. That being said, I agree with Chance that, you know, you should let them practice clutching if they get in that situation. But um, it's something that uh, I tend to emphasize, like, okay, you're in a clutch scenario means something incorrect happened. And often it's one misconception that can happen is that the last person alive was the one who didn't make the mistake. It's actually, I feel like, almost more often the case that the person who is the last alive is part of the problem. Because usually, right, if your team's committing to something that might have gotten them killed, um, in order to stay alive through that and get out, you might have had to bail really early, you know, when someone really needed you or something like that. Or, you know, if your team's committing to sort of like an idea that may not be the best, that bad idea might turn out better if you have 4 people that are really committed to making it happen, you know? um, and so I think these situations are they're interesting to analyze. But I would personally, I always make sure like that my team knows, like, okay, there was a mistake that led to this. Let's talk about that. You know.
Of
um,
course. Oh, sorry.
no, please, Chance. I think you're doing great. I was just like chatting with you.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. That's why, like, when I mentioned earlier, it's like when I see them do an event and half of us have died, but they still clear the event, I'll have them pause briefly and just explain what went wrong here, what could we have done better, what would we like to see happen. You know, I like to let them discuss it because I want them to kind of get the idea in their heads first, and if they really can't seem to figure it out, I'll kind of be a little bit of a guiding hand for them. Um, yeah, exactly. I agree with you, Long. That yeah, if we are in a clutch situation, something dire has gone wrong, and that's okay. It happens, but we definitely don't want to teach strats in which we are reliably clutching for sure.
It's a very interesting little discussion there about clutches. I'm glad we were able to get that in. Well, Chance, we're gonna rotate Johnny in here and give him a chance to talk because we saw his team a little bit earlier. But appreciate you joining us, and we may actually have you come back and join us just a little bit later, depending on where we at on time. But thanks for now, and thanks for providing the insight.
Of course, thank you guys, and you guys are doing great.
Well, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for saying
No,
that. Thank
you,
you so much.
Chance. You're popping off.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. I'll leave now. Good luck.
All right. So we're gonna get Johnny in here in just a second, and get his perspective on his team. They're actually at the mid event here, or the end event. I'm sorry, for Athel Yenli. So it should be interesting to get a coach's perspective on that. There's Johnny. Welcome, Johnny. Happy to have you with us.
You'll be able to get me next rotation.
Oh, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So we're looking at a bit of a dicey end event right now. So let's talk a little bit about your squad here. Where did you start off with this team in terms of getting them kind of ready to go for CW or C1WONS?
Very
Well,
nice.
my first thing was I asked them like, well, what's your end goal? Is it to just push up to C3 eventually? Is it just kind of have a good time, see what modded is all about and whatnot? And most of them like they had barely touched modded before, and they were just kind of looking to get an introduction to it and have a good time. So I went kind of easy on them, just trying to get like the basics and whatnot down, to like how to play modded, and like where to look for, potential info as well. Like for example, Cooley's videos with the triggers that was mentioned earlier. I've linked those and some builds and whatnot. But yeah,
No. Oh,
around
That's
there,
it.
I guess.
Very good, but that's a very good place to start, right? Is to start at the very beginning. We asked this question just of Chance just now, so I'll ask it of you because we just saw it happen on screen here with the wipe. I mean, where do you go on the back end of a wipe like that? Like, what's the start of the kind of the quote unquote post-mortem? Like, how do you pick that apart for the benefit of the team to like turn it into kind of a maximal learning value experience?
Well, I think it's fairly close to what Chance does. Was like I usually start by asking him, okay, what do you think went wrong? Where do you feel like things took a turn for the worse? But I will also point out like sometimes it's like, oh, yeah, you guys, you were just not kiting together, or like I don't know what happened there. You didn't prioritize this. Like I will sometimes say that just like up off the bat if it's super obvious.
Mhm.
but I do think it's important to let people think for themselves, at least in the beginning, a lot. Maybe give them hints of like, okay, this is something you should look for, and then eventually, when you ask them like what went wrong, they're gonna tell you exactly what you were thinking, which is like, oh, we just didn't kite correctly, or we didn't prioritize this stormer, or whatever it could have been that killed them.
Fair enough. I mean, I think that's a pretty even-handed way to sort of approach these things. I mean, obviously, Alpha Yen Louis as a map and Ishkin Luck. I mean, I'm sure you guys have opinions on this as well, but to me at least, this is a really challenging map. It's one of the ones that I think I personally find the most difficult, even on just kind of like regular difficulty. What's the preparation process for like a notoriously difficult map like this?
That's a good question. The funny thing in general with these guys is we went through the maps and I said like, yeah, I think that Athel is probably gonna be the most annoying one in this tier and so on. And they picked basically all the maps that I said, I think these are gonna be the most annoying and hardest one in each tier. And they said, you know what, we're gonna be ballers and we're gonna show off and we're gonna do all the hardest maps, which I thought was kind of funny.
Okay.
That's excellent. I love that.
Yeah, that is fun. But I think for me it was very important to try and just get the trigger management down because I feel like that's usually on this map specifically in this first area. That's what I die to the most. It's just like a mismanagement of the trigger here in the beginning. Also just getting stuck on roots and all that. So I was trying to just get him into the headspace of like take it slow, push the trigger slowly, make sure you don't pull too much ambience into hordes and check where you're going. Also communicate like when we are pushing and when we're not pushing, we're going for items and all of that. Also team comps. I mean, they've tried a few different team comps, and I know that this team comp specifically is a bit of a
But they each have one
it's a
HP,
bit of an odd one, maybe.
so it's balanced.
But we kind of came to the conclusion that like a hard backline wasn't really necessary for C1 because most ranged weapons just one-shot everything anyway. So I just kind of said, okay, let's just put you guys on career you feel comfortable with, and let's make sure we have at least some people who can do some sniping, and then we'll see how it goes.
Exactly that happened.
Another like issue with backlining for them is they don't really have anyone who's comfortable playing any of like the hard backlines like Waystalker, Huntsman, or Bolt Wizard, for example, which have made some maps a little harder, I'd say. Like,
No, I need to think about Sigmar. If you don't know,
they ran Bounty
put in
Hunter for a
chat,
while
I have
on
a
this
picture
map
of,
as well,
Victor
but they
Salsfire on my
ended on
desk. And
the sell it instead because
the
it just
picture
felt
frame has the
comfy.
word "Daddy and Me" titled on it.
But yeah.
Are these players? I want to get more into their minds. Is this their first modded difficulty that they're playing?
Yes, most of them had like maybe one game or two games played of C1, just C1
Nah, we're done.
Onslaught, not Dwans, just Onslaught. And then they just kind of did it with a friend, like duoing, and they didn't make it past the first wave, like Horde or whatever. Or some of them had only played some Peregrinache, or however you say that, like the Chaos Waste mod.
I see.
So
Okay.
so they were very, very new to the modded realm. They didn't know anything really about like what we would call end game Vermintide, you know, like builds or like what you should have on weapons and all of that. Like they ran in with like 5% damage increase to chaos and push block angle increase on weapons, for example. And I'm like, you know, maybe you should maybe change that, you know, like, oh, why? And then, you know, you go through like why these things might be worse than others. And all that. So it's been fun to coach someone from basically zero because they hadn't watched anything either, really. They just kind of knew what this was, but not really. So it's been fun.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, something I'm gonna ask you, and I hope Chance hears this. This is another. I failed to ask this. What was an aha moment for somebody on your team? Well, something clicked. When did the light bulb come on? Like, what was a moment in time that you saw, hey, I figured this out?
I think the funniest thing, I hope he doesn't feel called out by it, but Skeleton Man, who's been running IB on most maps, it was in this second week, he taunted as IB, right, or ulted, and he tanked an overhead while blocking from a Chaos Warrior. And he said like, oh my god, I have infinite block while I'm in my ult. And it's just like, Yes, I thought you knew this. I thought that was funny. But you know, it's like one of these obvious things where I felt like that's just you know that right after like X amount of hours in like the base game you would know that, but it didn't, and that was a great moment where it's like, oh yes, now you learned something. Great.
I can see that though, because you never know. It could be like your IB when you're in that stance. Maybe you just have an extremely reduced block cost. But no, it is infinite. But I can kind of see where like maybe they're like, oh, okay, I can block a lot more. Well, no, you block everything.
Yeah. So it was fun to see. Other than that, I don't know if it was anything specific. I think also another thing where they learned early on is that there's like specific areas where you have like little balls of like, oh, here's a trigger for this patrol or boss. They thought that was just kind of timed randomly throughout the map, rather than having like specific areas where it would always
Okay.
trigger. That was also like a for them when that was like explained to them.
Well, that's
Yeah.
good. I feel like that teaches your players, and I think that's something everyone can pull from, is that you have a lot more in control of the map. It's a lot more getting the enemy to respond to you than to you, the players, to be reactionary to the environment.
Yes.
Oh no, definitely. You know, it's funny to hear you talk about kind of these little things that people learn, but admittedly, I think everybody starts out at a certain point where they don't know about triggers, they don't know about kind of like certain parts of the ability or the kit. So, it affects us. It affects us all equally. So I don't think anybody's gonna feel particularly called out here or anything like that. As I see them kind of grouped up here, sort of handling this. I know that they came in, you said, probably with like some ideas of the characters they wanted to play and stuff. Is there a lot of kind of like I don't know what the right term is, training necessarily that has to happen behind the scenes in order to get people more comfortable with like certain roles in this level of difficulty, or do people kind of just slot into them quite naturally?
With this team, there had to be a bit of it's a bit in between, because like the first time I just booted up a game and said, okay, let's just play Screaming Bell. That was the first map they booted in on. I was like, just play a game, and I won't say anything, and I'll just see how you guys play. And there wasn't really any teamwork. People just running around all over the place. You didn't really have a front line. You didn't run to specific places. So I think that they knew, like, if I said, okay, we need a front line, obviously they know, okay, we need a tanky, or not necessarily a tanky, but like a good melee character in front that can just hold, enemies at bay or whatnot. But there was definitely some discussions of like, what is a good front line? Like Foot Knight or IB is obviously some extreme cases, but because when I said like a front line, they could name anything that was a melee, really. Like someone said Shade at the beginning. I'm like, I don't know if I'd say Shade is a good front line necessarily, but you know.
I think there was a build back in the day. I don't know if it still exists, at least for the regular. I don't know about this though. So maybe a little bit of misconception. I mean, how do you feel? How do you feel that they've done? I mean, I know that they've still got a lot to play today, and obviously we've only really seen them do Athel Lauren. But just as as their captain, as somebody who has helped them train, how do you feel about the end state that they got to?
I feel like they've made a lot of improvements. Considering like the first day when I played with them, they didn't know why you would use block cost reduction on your melee weapons, for example. They didn't know really what a good team comp was, so like how maps worked. They didn't know triggers existed. And now they're like walking through maps, and most maps they get two triggers, or not triggers, they get like events, and then maybe there they have some issues in some maps, but they're walking through most maps with like no real issue, which is a huge step up from the beginning where they would die basically in spawn. So I'm very happy where they've gotten to, and I think that if they want to go even further in the future, they could definitely do so. So
Great.
I'm happy.
Yeah, no, they look, I will say, I know that we saw them wipe, but in general, the way that they're handling these challenges, I mean, they look dramatically improved from a team that didn't necessarily know, where trigger events were. So, good job on you, and of course, good job on them. But we're gonna try and rotate another one of our captains in here. So, thank you so much, Johnny, for taking the time to talk with us about your team and for helping out in the community like this.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being part of this, Corvic had said. Thank you.
I'm going to see where some of our other teams are at right now as we look to bring up perhaps in our next captain. I think we're going to bring in Kaizaki in just a second, but it does look like the team is just resetting here, but that's okay. We'll pull it up. Welcome, Kaizaki. I hope I'm getting that right, and thanks for joining us here for the captain's series.
Hi, thanks for having me. Yeah, the name's Kazaki. That's correct.
All right, good. Glad to hear it. Never quite know with gamer tags or with real names, I guess, actually at the start of it. But so your team here, what are we looking at here with this squad? Where did they start out here on their journey, the captain series? Because we've been getting people all over the place.
Yeah, so these guys, none of them had played too much Deathwish Onslaught when they started. So I started them out on C1 ones to see how they get on, and they've done really well. They've actually taken it up to Kata 3 on 2 other maps here. So it's been really cool to see how they progress.
That's really impressive, honestly, that they've managed to go kind of that far up the ladder. I think we have them listed as Cattle 1 Deathwish Onslaught today, but to be able to handle 3 is definitely, that's something. What was kind of the big challenge starting out, though, with this team? Where did you have to kind of get the ball rolling?
So the experience difference with the members of this team was quite large. 2 of the guys had about 1,000 or more hours, or 1,600, I believe, and then the other 2 had only a couple hundred each. So there's quite a bit of an experience gap, and getting them to work together and to see the same challenges and to overcome them using the same tactics, I think was quite difficult for this team. So that's mostly what we've been working on.
Interesting. That is definitely something that we haven't really brought up, is kind of closing the experience gap, so to speak. I wondered about this too when you get players who are new to sort of Kata 1 or like Kata 1, Deathwish, Onslaught, what have you, all the horrible mods, but who have had a lot of experience in the game. Do they sometimes, is there like bad habits that need to be unlearned? Like, do you have to train bad habits out of people to get them kind of to hang a little bit better at these kind of modded difficulties?
Yeah. I've found that people who have a lot of hours in official, and especially those that come from sort of the Twitch crowd and the deeds and weaves as well, they will tend to assume they have to do everything on the team. They'll have to be the DPS frontline. They'll have to backline as well. They'll have to kill specials, and they'll have to think about movement and triggers. Although triggers is not so much of an important topic on official realm, but getting them used to taking a single role in the team and focusing on just that was difficult for a couple of them, I think. So, for example, Mike, he was very used to kind of shooting every special he saw, even as playing Foot Knight, for example. And so I wanted him to try to push more into a singular role so that he wouldn't be tempted to turn around as the front line and shoot specials, bringing the aggro from the front line through into the back line and then causing a team to take a lot of damage.
Right.
So I actually found that it was good for him to be on a flex class, like a Witch Hunter, for example, or in this case, Shade, he's playing now, because he can still kind of do both those roles there, but it is his job on the team now.
Yeah, that makes a fair amount of sense, and I definitely, as somebody who's put a many hours into kind of regular, modded, unmodded difficulty or what have you, I can sympathize with the need to feel like you have to do it all, especially when you're being matched up with just kind of random people. Obviously, as far as like the map pool goes here, where did you kind of start in terms of training maps? Like, obviously, we're doing. Why can I not remember the name of this one? Somebody call me on this. I can't remember the name of this map, but like, where did you? There you go. Thank you. Where did you start kind of on training this?
So for this one in particular, I took a kind of a backseat approach to coaching this team because Stabby is the most experienced player there. He has 1,600 or 1,700 hours roughly, and he was pretty good at making calls for the team based on just his instinct to playing. So rather than me sort of telling them what to do and being in game with them, always sort of backseat gaming, I would just let them play. And so they chose to do this map, and the only times I kind of butted in was when I thought their holding spot was particularly bad, or when they were pushing into a situation that they didn't really have a plan for, like the event, and trigger management and that kind of thing. But a lot of the time I just sort of step back and let them figure out this map themselves, which they've done really well at. So a couple times in training, we've had an issue with not being able to get everybody online at the same time a lot of the time. So it's often been just 3 people, and so in those situations I'll jump in as a 4th player and then just guide them through to the best spots. But yeah, most of the time they've just been going through by themselves, and then if they wipe, I can tell them what they could have done better, or ask them where they think they might have been able to do something differently. Yeah.
I mean, that's I think a very sensible way to approach it. And Ishka, it sounds like you got a question.
Oh yeah, I like that it's the reliance on experience in some ways, or I should say the benefit of having that, like you said, being able to create a hole here for some players to be like, okay, this is how we're going to approach this. Or maybe they need that little bit of breathing room because the pressure is on. You're like, what am I doing? You might have that little sense of overwhelm creeping in you're in the back of your head. But then if Stabby is typically meaning something like a bounty hunter, you hear that gunshot, you hear Saltzfire screaming, and you're like, okay, you know what? We got this. This is going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah, Bounty Hunter was an interesting pick for this map. Especially since when they first tried it, and they picked a comp that they were fairly used to, but it didn't have an awful lot of Lord damage, because of course the event on Onslaught is a little bit different from on base game. So you have a lot of elites and a lot of pressure spawning at the same time as Scarrick Spine Mangle at the boss. So you can't simply just bring, I don't know, a Grail Knight or a Bounty Hunter and just one-shot the boss and then be done with it, because you have all this other stuff coming down on top of you. So so they tried this first with a team comp that they were comfortable with, but didn't have a lot of Lord damage. I think Stabby was on Shade, and they did pretty well. I think the first time they nearly killed the boss, they got him down to maybe a quarter health, and then they couldn't cope with the influx of pressure on them. So I suggested they think about changing up the team comp a bit and using something that they could be comfortable kiting with, as well as doing boss damage. And nuke the boss to begin with if they can, but if they can't, they need to start adopting a more kiting fluid strat until they can get the damage back on the boss. So Stabby decided to go Bounty Hunter, and they would try and put a potion on him to then do as much boss damage as possible. So, and they came to this conclusion pretty much on their own. So yeah, that's been really good.
Excellent. So does that mean that this team is has a versatile comp lineup, like different maps or different lineups?
Yeah. So I think they use Bounty Hunter again on Kazukan, and they just completed Bell actually on Keta 3, and they had Witch Hunter Captain instead, and they still had no difficulty taking down both the bosses on that map. So yeah, they changed around each map depending on their scenario, which was really good to see.
It is good because you got a lot of flavors. I feel like that's a lot of different. You're the captain. Do you think that that's harder for like mind shifts or like switching gears for like, okay, we've been playing for how many hours? You know, maybe you played for 2 or 3 hours on practice, and you're like, I still got some time. We're gonna switch it, so I'm gonna get to the Shade. You've been playing Bounty this entire time. Maybe Stabby's the wrong example, but do you get what I'm saying? I'm playing one career for a certain amount of time. I'm gonna play a different one. Have you seen kind of like it's a little rocky all over again?
Yeah, I've found that playing, I haven't noticed that that they've had too much issues swapping after they get used to a certain career, and then the next map they change up. I think some careers, I think, for me at least, take a little bit of time to warm up to after you've been playing something more hard frontline. And then if I was to swap to Bolt Battle Wizard, for example, then I would need a warm up game, I think, to get used to getting those sniping, getting that sniping on point. And but I think they've been very good at adapting this team. And for Request and Yeg, playing Ironbreaker and Freebus respectively on this map, they've both warmed up to the role of frontline really well, I think. Especially Request, his Ironbreaker, it was difficult to know when, difficult for him to know when to ult to begin with, and after a few training sessions, you know, they've got used to ulting in combination, so Ironbreakers would go off, and then the others would be able to use that time to do damage.
I mean, you know, I'm gonna ask you a question because we had a little bit of a discussion earlier, but I'm getting interested in seeing people's sort of different perspectives on it. Do you kind of train for clutches? Is there like a clutch protocol with these guys, or did you just kind of, is that a little bit not really in the wheelhouse, or kind of not something that we want to focus on?
We haven't trained specifically for a clutch situation, but we've had some times where there's been 2 people left alive, and there's still got a lot of resources that they haven't used that's fallen on the floor, for example. And so I've talked to them about how you can, how if you're one of 2 or the last person alive and you have to clutch, then be aware of what resources your team potentially dropped, and how to use them and things in certain situations. But mostly we haven't done clutch practice because, well, as I said, we haven't had too much time with this team due to real life getting in the way.
Sure.
But there have been times for sure where there have been 1 or 2 people left alive, and they've managed to pull it off. In fact, in Bell, the last map, they had I think 1 or 2 occasions where there were just two guys left up, and they pulled it off really well. They stuck together, they used their resources, and they pulled off the rest. But we haven't trained it specifically, no.
That makes sense.
Mostly because I think I would prefer to, if the time is limited, focus on how to not get into that situation in the first place.
Yeah, I think that's, you know, it's a very valid perspective. Like I said, it's just interesting, I think, to get a different, like, to get an idea of how different captains feel about it. But you're right. I mean, if you're in a clutch scenario already, I think Lonk was saying something similar earlier. No, things have already gone wrong, so you know, it's not ideal. I just gotta ask: is a one-handed axe on Bounty Hunter? What's the play there? That's awesome. Somebody had mentioned in the Twitch chat, and I just clocked it.
Yeah. So Rapier is obviously the de facto, right. The normal for Bounty Hunter is very safe. So Stabby likes to play a little bit off meta when it's still effective, because I mean, I think it's fun. I do that too. I have some very funny builds that I try to make work in higher difficulty. So the idea behind one-handed axe is because Blessed Combat for Bounty Hunter is now a passive trait. Melee kills reset the cooldown of blast shots, and so your critical hit with your ranged weapon. So the idea with axe is that because of the high single target damage, you can much more quickly get a melee kill to reset your cooldown. And on top of that, it's a little bit of extra armor damage, which never hurts. It's less safe than Rapier, but it's working for them because they still have Merc for THP and crowd control, and then they've got the Ironbreaker for the ult.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. It's definitely cool to see. It's a vibe of a weapon. So happy to see it. I mean, we're gonna transition in just a second. So I just want to get kind of a last thought from you, and maybe we'll bring you back in later, just to, you know, time dependent. But how do you feel like they've done as we see them kind of relatively efficiently chunking their way through layer here?
Yeah, so far they've done amazingly well. Since they started out barely being able to complete C1-1s as a whole team, and now the very, very cleanly completed Bell on Kata 3-1s first try, or everybody doing their job perfectly. And now this is also Kata 3-1s. They decided to do 2 maps on C1, 2 maps on C3.
Okay.
And they're actually going to do Blight Reaper as well, which is going to be interesting to watch later. So, yeah, so far they've done amazing. I think they'll probably be able to get through this end event no problem too. I hope. Yeah, I'm very proud of them.
Well, that's great. I'm glad to hear that. And yeah, it's always good to hear, coaches, captains feel like they've really seen some decent progress coming out of these teams. And I mean, sounds like with these guys, they did excellent progress. So thank you very much for your time, Kaizaki, and obviously for taking part in the whole event and helping coach these players up. I know everybody in the community really appreciates it.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's been great to be a part of all this.
All right, well, we're gonna go ahead and in just a second we're gonna bring Slash Kex in. I think they're just getting through some stuff here on Righteous Stand. Let's go ahead and rotate over to them and see where they are here. And sure enough, they are chunking away here. It's great to see kind of the vibe shift on the maps here. Ishka, as we work our way through, it's a lot of different scenarios and different players on different classes as well.
Go ahead and move them in again. Also, Kai, thank you so much for being here and sharing your insight.
Thanks very much.
Oh, like you want us to shoot it?
Well, there we go.
All right.
Well, welcome, Slash Kex. Happy to have you.
Hi there. How are we doing?
We're doing all right. We're watching some Vermintide play. What more could you want on any given day? And we're here to we're gonna have a little chat about your team here. And so why don't you give us a perspective on where you started with this squad? Because I know you guys are doing Kata 3 Deathwish Onslaught, so a high difficulty. We're not starting out on C1 like some of our other teams.
Well, right off the bat, it was pretty obvious that overall mechanical skill was not something that was going to be too much of an issue here. It would be experience within different careers, different builds, and then just making the next step in the difficulties. Like, what do you do when there are more enemies? What do you do when they show up more often? How do you deal more damage with something you've already played 200 hours with? That sort of thing.
Makes a lot of sense.
I feel like that last one is really big. Yeah, can you go deeper on that for me? Like, what was something they're like, no, I'm good, I have this, and you're like, well, no, hold on, you can do more. Like, can you talk more on that?
Well, for example, we have we have April, who has played a lot of Waystalker and continues to do so. But there are different things you can do. For example, how you approach. She plays a lot of piercing shot, so you can't afford to miss there.
Right.
But because there are so many enemies in modded difficulties, you need to get your shots off very quickly. But once again, you cannot miss. So how do you approach fighting that many enemies whilst not dying, hitting your shots, and not giving up your special sniping responsibilities at the same time? So that was something that we had to go over just in a bit more detail on, first of all, how you even use the piercing shot. What do you prioritize? What about your movement? Because even your movement affects how an enemy you're aiming at moves in response to you. That sort of thing.
Wow. Yeah, no, I didn't even consider movement. It's one of those things where I think Long has said it. It's so many things that are like passive that you do in the game, and what things impact how you play. Yeah, I didn't even consider moving. And are they still running piercing shot right now?
No. We are.
Oh no, I just saw
this is
LP.
this is Hackstalker time, because I'm guessing we just wanted a bit more overall damage into everything, because special sniping doesn't seem to be that much of an issue. So honestly, if you're good on the uptake with Hagbane, you can get it done.
I see. Something I want to just say that I've noticed every single team do, and I've seen maybe this is every single captain, maybe there's a collective thought here that I haven't caught on to yet, but I've seen every team utilize barrels. I love it. It is excellent.
I mean, I suppose they are useful. I mean, the explosive ones, if you have good timing against like a Packmaster, against the boss, it's extra stagger, so it can help there. The fire barrels, as long as you're not standing in them, or you have the health to tank the damage, you can do a lot. So, they work. They work. It's that simple.
Can you talk to us some more about your team and your players here? Obviously we've got some experience going on here. We've got an extremely tanky lineup, I should say, with the IP. You got your Grail. What are kind of like your characters' backgrounds, or your players' backgrounds, I should say, in terms of the difficulty that they've played and stepping into the Captain series?
Well, to start things off, first of all, we had to sub in someone today. Hanime, our Iron Breaker for today, was not supposed to be playing with us. We were supposed to have Caleb, but something came up for him, and unfortunately, he was unable to make it. But Caleb, to start off with him, very experienced player in modded. He's been around for a few years now. I wrote some board reviews for him, and he plays a good variety of different things, and he's also experimented with a lot of different careers during the last 2 weeks. I mean, there was some Unchained action, there's been Shade, there's been some Dwarf, Slayer, you name it, and he probably tried it out. So he's been going around trying a lot of different things and just picking my mind about how to go about playing the different careers and why you play them the way you do. Now, for Magic, I'd say he's the most skilled in the team, but honestly, that's perfectly fine, because fortunately for everybody involved, myself included, he decided to take on the role of shot calling whenever there was a need for it. So he obviously has a lot of experience in modded as well, with a lot of Grail Knight, some Huntsman as well, backlining, so he dabbles in everything. But he makes it all work. He plays it very well. April, I believe, is relatively new to modded, but plays it very well. So I have absolutely no complaints. We just rolled into modded, and then we're smacking the rats with her. With Bottom Fragger, well, contrary to his name, he is no bottom feeder, because he gets the job done, let me tell you. He once again, another person that experiments with different things. With April and Tom, we even talked about some aim labs stuff when I brought it up at some point. So we talked about a lot of different things. But Tom as well is an experienced modern player and plays at the level that would place him at. More experience needed, but at the right skill level. And honestly, he also they just kill the rats, and they do it very well.
I really like one that you're able to look at your team and kind of see them individually and collectively. Can you also talk more about maybe how they kind of fell into, like you said, I missed who it was exactly, but they fell into like a leadership role, being the shot caller. Has everyone stepped up to kind of like fill those roles like passively, or they're like, I'm gonna do it?
Well, it was more of a, well, first of all, it was Magic, our resident Grail Knight here, who ended up doing this. And if I recall the conversation, it was more like, well, if nobody's going to do it, then I'll do it, which is perfectly fine. And honestly, I do like that we have somebody doing shot calling, because somebody needs to make a decision when shit hits the fan. Like, it doesn't matter if it's a good plan or a bad plan. There just needs to be a plan, and it needs to be executed. If it works, okay, you can take notes and it works. If it doesn't work, you can learn from that too. So that somebody needs to make a call here and there. And as for somebody else trying to like make calls or such, not necessarily. There's the occasional call out. Like, they've gotten better at communication, especially about enemies coming from different directions. But I don't think anybody's really looking to steal anybody else's thunder in that regard.
Okay. I mean that.
Yeah,
that
so they
makes
really
a
are
lot of
using.
sense. Go ahead. We're chatting.
No, I was just saying they really are working as a collective. That's awesome.
Yeah, they really are, and I agree. Just one thing that I would like to note about this team is that if there is one word I could describe them with, it's initiative. Like, it is unbelievable how much they, how should I say it? They really just, if they have an idea or if they have a question or anything, they simply just asked or they get it done. Like, April, for example, was the one that reached out to me, like, I don't know, like 2 weeks before the whole coaching thing started, that if I could actually be the coach for this team. Now, I said, I asked Genotti, and then we had a chat, and then as long as I was fine with it and I had no problems, I said yes, and then I occasionally helped out before the whole coaching thing even began. Now,
Okay.
on the other parts, Caleb, who's unfortunately not here today, is never afraid to ask questions, never afraid to try something new. So there is that. And Magic, as well as Tom, once again, not afraid to try something new, always ready with the questions if there's anything. And let's say that I usually give feedback at the end of a run. And if there's like 2 seconds of silence after a run, there's already the questions coming, like, slash, what could we have done better? Or like any comments. So even if I try to slack off, there's no chance.
That's good, because that's like, let's find information here. Let's apply it. Let's use it. Let's bring it into the next mission.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Ooh, there's a big Ben hammer coming out from Sigmar.
Yeah.
I mean, they seem to have handled this run pretty well here. I mean, Righteous Stand obviously is a map that maybe looks a little bit more difficult than it is. Did you guys have any maps in their pool where you were like, oh, this was particularly challenging, or this one's particularly hard to train up?
I'd say Convo, but like just the event with the 3 bosses. But even
Yes.
then, that wasn't even related to skill. It was more like executing the right plan. And I say the right plan because that was an initial plan, and that needed an adjustment. It wasn't working out. So we changed up that plan, and the change seems to work. I'd say it still needs a bit more work to really iron out the details, but it works better. Kiting just on Righteous was also a bit of a pain point for Magic, especially because he said that he sucks at it. Well, the kind of performance they put on today and yesterday as well when they were on this map would have you believe that he's lying. Like, just straight looking into your eyes is lying just through his teeth, because they are doing that extremely well. Like yesterday when they were on it, that was just, apart from like individual mistakes, the actual execution of what needs to be done in a kite, I have no complaints. Same for today. It was done pretty damn well.
I know. That's good. I'm glad to hear. I'm glad to hear you say that. Honestly, when it came to sort of prepping them in kind of a generalized sort of team comps and stuff, was there anything that they were really leaning into? I mean, I'm just looking at what they have right now, and I see a warrior priest and a slayer. These are definitely like interesting picks to say the least.
There were some preferences. Just the ones that people naturally gravitate towards. April is the elf sympathizer, which is perfectly fine.
Of course,
Um,
always got one.
Tom usually ends up on the witch hunter with the bill hook, which is perfectly fine as well. Magic is usually around the Grail Knight, Huntsman, that sort of thing. And Caleb, I can't tell what he would prefer to play. He's played around. There's so many different things that in let me think for a moment. I'd say mostly prefers frontliners. Is not that experienced with backliners, but even then, when he did play Waste Soccer once, and he got into the groove of things, it was going pretty well. So a good mixture on that.
Excellent. That's good to hear. It sounds like it's always good to hear that roles are being, I think, handled relatively well, and everybody's kind of
Mhm.
slotting in and has some classes that they like. So that's good to hear indeed. I mean, before we kind of rotate around to our next team, any final thoughts you want to share about the squad here?
One thing that I'm very happy to see that they picked up, even if just in a way that didn't exactly explain to them in great detail, is taking a 5-10 minute break when you're playing this game or you're playing any game. Like Vermintide at this difficulty is not a chill experience. The
No.
mental fatigue sits in like 2 hours in, so to speak. Like at that point, you can keep going, of course. You're not gonna mentally collapse or what have you. But if you take a 10 minute break and then continue after, like you walk away from your screen, you go out, get some fresh air, that sort of thing, it helps. It helps your ability to just keep going and keep up your performance. And that's what's happening right now. Um, I don't know what happened with Tom. I'm guessing he's restarting his computer, but that's fine. We're fine. We
Yes.
have April went to get a banana to just get some energy up. Perfectly fine. Perfectly fine. And I'm really glad they are doing this. It helps.
It's great. I'm glad you brought it up because it's very true. It's important to take breaks and at least at the very least rest your eyes. But thank you so much here, Slash guys. Appreciate you both captaining and joining us here on the stream to talk about it. And your team is doing very well. So we'll probably check in with them a little bit later. But for now, we're gonna move on to our next squad. So thanks for joining us, and hopefully we'll hear from you in a bit.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'll see you guys around. Bye
Take
bye.
care.
Yeah. See you.
Well, there was appreciate slash Kex. I keep bottling that, but I appreciate them joining us there to talk about it. We're gonna have Fluffy Dino join us here, or Mr. Fluffy Dino. Sorry, I should not forget the Mister. Fluffy Dino join us here just a little bit to talk about their squad. It looks like they're on into the lair as well, fighting their way through, and hopefully we'll get them in just a second, but we are almost coming up to the kind of hour and a half mark. Obviously, we're going to go all the way here through to, well, it'll be noon my time, but 3 o'clock Eastern or wherever you're coming from. So lots more rat slaying here to come, obviously, and a lot more from these captains as well. It's been a very good to, I think, get a broad cross section of what our captains are about and how they feel about their teams and the process, honestly, of of getting teams up and ready to go. See if we can get Fluffy Nino and abduct them into the chat. Here we are.
There we go.
There we go. Welcome, Mr. Fluffy Dino. Thank you for joining us here to talk about your team.
Well, hello. Thank you for having me.
Oh no, it's a pleasure to have someone here to talk about the squad. It's just unfortunate that we brought you in at a moment where your squad seems to be a little bit underwater right now.
Yeah, what I can say about that is I think this map is probably the map they least practiced. So, and they never had this trigger, so they probably weren't talking about it, but they probably obviously should have like went forward instead of backwards. So, well, yeah, I mean, stuff like that happens. It's the least played map, and yeah, I mean, now they know. It's just stuff like that happens, I guess.
Well, I really like their threat assessment to the idea. Plus, they were utilizing, the hedge and the doorway and trying to keep the rats back for just as much as they could to try to get that space to maybe take down that ogre. Like they did that twice. They're using the brambles as best they can, and I feel like that was some pretty good situational awareness from our sister.
Yeah, definitely. But after all, I think it would have been like easier to go forward to like kite around and maybe even like ledge the Roger there. But yeah, we didn't look at that. We never had this trigger in practice, so it is what it is.
So they're pushing themselves with this map. What is a map that they practiced to feel that you would say they're confident on?
I think. I mean, they said they are very confident on Into the Nest, so that's also like the reason why we didn't look at it that much. Like we mainly looked at the end event and at the third trigger, because third trigger area on Nest is, like in my opinion, probably one of the hardest areas in the whole game. And yeah, so I think another map that they're pretty confident on is Empire. I think they will probably played last, but we looked at quite a bit of stuff there in the end event, especially since I think there is quite a lot of like to it. We also looked a lot at Old Haunts, but I feel like they have a bit of a like comp issue there. Like they seem to be very strict when it comes to their comps. Like they don't really like to try out completely new stuff, which is okay, but it makes it a bit hard for me. Like if I have a comp, I'm proposing it to them and they're just not comfortable playing it. So yeah, I'm not gonna force anyone to play anything they don't want. So I just had to like do the best out of it, although it wasn't like how I would have done it. So I just made minor changes to the comps they're comfortable on. So
Yeah, so play into their strengths. And speaking of the
yeah.
comp, I'm just looking at the weapons, and I'm loving the diversity here. You got a two-headed axe and the steam axe on our Slayer. You got a man bow. I can't tell, is that a spear and shield, or is it just a spear on Kruber?
Spear
And
and
then
shield. Yeah, that's actually I put in a lot of work that he actually tries this weapon, because he was usually just playing greatsword all the time on Foot Knight.
oh,
And I
great
told
sword is
him,
awesome.
I mean, it's like greatsword. We all know greatsword is a very strong weapon in TB, but it's just like not really that kind of thing you want on a Foot Knight, at least not from my perspective. Like you want a bit more like holding power and stuff. But he, like in the second week, I told him he could try Spear and Shield, and he really likes it. So I'm glad he could like get a different weapon that is, in my opinion, a bit better overall. So yeah, Spear and
Yeah,
Shield,
and
big fan.
seeing the sister, I think I saw her using a glaive, and then Saltspire's got his bill hook. Just I just like the break from the norm. It kind of seems it's like you said, playing to their strengths, playing to their desires, and building around that. I think that's really really important.
Yeah, I just didn't want to like make them play something they didn't want. I also had discussions with Desirel on like Hail Scourge, and she just always like played uh well, first of all, always Swiftbow on Waystalker, which is very like that. I wasn't even aware people play this weapon to like 2 weeks ago, and also heal share, like for every map. I think that can be like come in pretty handy on some maps, but uh, I feel like especially on Hail Scourge, you really just want Bark Skin for the end event with the Biochemist, because without Bark Skin, you just take 30 damage to one Biochemist attack, and you just get shredded.
Yeah,
But
I
they
see what
were
you're saying.
they were like very they just insisted on using that. So not really much for me to do there, you know. Like I don't want to force anyone to play something that they don't want to play. So yeah.
No, I think that is a healthy approach because like Slash had said, well, I think every captain has said, I mean, you want to play and have fun at the end of the day. But it's also about getting better with like your team as a whole, about playing the things you want, play to the strengths, see who's going to fulfill what role if possible. You know, obviously you're going to need that, but it's how can you do it in different ways that aren't your typical. And I think we might be able to see some of that showcased here. That's really cool. Can you tell me maybe a little bit about the players themselves? Do they have modded experience? Where are they coming from in terms of like base game?
Yeah, sure. When I first met them, I asked them some questions to like get to know them a bit better. And apparently they are already playing with each other for 2 years, but mainly just C1 once. So yeah, I kind of pushed them to go C3 once since like after I realized that they were playing pretty long already on C1 once. And yeah, also like the team coherency seems pretty good. They talk with each other, which I personally, when I started modded, I had a lot of issues with that, like talking and communicating, but they really communicate a lot, and I think that's like you can see that they are playing for quite a while already. Yeah.
Okay. So I mean that's added. Yeah.
Communicating well.
That's
like,
added.
It's hard to learn, right, Ishka? I mean, that's just like I feel like that's a hard thing to pick up is always communication, and you're not obviously the first captain that's brought that up.
Oh yeah, like Fluffy Dino just said. Being able to have played with somebody for 2 years, you know, is an incredible amount of time, and you don't know how many other games you're playing with them, but it's kind of just like these are your buddies. You already have like that innate um um communication or play style with each other. You know what to kind of expect of how they're going to handle certain situations. And I agree, or I should say, I am the same. When I first started playing, even Cataclysm for the first time, or even like Weaves once I broke into like Weave 81, you know, my ability to speak kind of just fell. Like I could not talk. I had to process what was in front of me. Someone, please tell me what's going on.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to kill this one thing in front of me, you know. And so you have to play hours, honestly, for me. Maybe other people latch on differently, but hours to be able to begin to kind of communicate where you are, what you think is going on. Someone's like, okay, we're moving up here, and you can be like, nope, I'm not ready for that. I gotta do this part first. And so that's a big deal.
Yeah, definitely.
Was there any I guess, you know, we talked a little bit, they haven't had a ton of time to practice this particular map. Was there any other maps that kind of posed a particular challenge, or was this kind of the one?
I think the biggest challenge was probably Old Haunts. Like it's even
understandable.
to this day, it's like still not very consistent. Like they have beaten the events and stuff, but it's not like consistent to a degree that I would say that they're having it down very well. But they have beaten it, and yeah, like we practiced it a lot, and I proposed like a lot of changes to the comps, like having a battle wizard, for example. I think having a battle wizard in the mid event is like so huge. You can ult out and ult back in instantly with like no issues at all. Like it's very safe. But since nobody like wanted to play battle wizard, that kind of fell away. So I just told them to like go for Knight and Sister to have like a lot of control to push out and back in, cancel the mid event, stuff like that. Yeah, like we tried a lot of stuff on that map, and yeah, it's obviously also probably the hardest maps of the ones we picked. So yeah, naturally you put in a lot of time in this map.
Yeah, no, definitely. You know that is a very hard map. So I kind of dread it. To be fair, so Good to know that I am not alone. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Fluffy Dino, for joining us. We might have you come back in just a little bit later. We got some other teams, obviously, that we want to showcase and what have you. But it's always great to get different captain perspectives and hear all about these teams. And just as a sort of last send off, how do you feel about the general sense of progress these folks have made?
I think they definitely made some progress. Like at the beginning, we were playing C11s, and I told them like that's just too easy, in my opinion. Like I mean, doing good is definitely nice and all, but like I thought they're just breezing through the maps a bit too easily, so I told them to like step up to C3.
Make it harder.
And yeah, I kind of said it that way, yeah. And yeah, I can definitely see an improvement on like throughout these 2 weeks. Like they got a lot more confident throughout the maps and also in the events. And yeah, I don't know what their plans are after the event if they go back to C11s, but I obviously hope that they like stay on C3 and like try to push their limits. Yeah.
Great, good stuff, man. Thank you so much for joining us, and yeah, we'll maybe talk to you a little bit later.
All right. See you then.
See you.
So we got a couple of teams here, I should say, that unfortunately we don't have their captains in to talk about today, but I think we would still really, we'd love to see them on stream. So I don't want to take away those opportunities. You got, at least I know Uves is here. They look like they're not quite available at the moment, so we'll try and get them a little bit to talk about their team, and then maybe we'll rotate back through some of the people that we've already had come through. But let's go ahead and bring up Kiwi Cake here, another Cat of One Death Wish Onslaught team, and their source volume is really high, and I apologize for that off the top of the rip, but we'll turn them down just a little bit. We're all hearing everything that's going on that stream right now, but it looks like they're doing Moore's Garden at the moment, and they're doing quite well. I think, all things considered. It's been a kind of a lovely set of captains that we've had so far at the hour and a half mark here, guys.
Yeah, honestly, it's one to, like you said, being able to hear from all the captains. I'm really taking in a lot of what the teams are doing. I'm looking at all the different weapon choices. If Locke, you wanted maybe touch on why the balance change, or like weapons that the balance change kind of buffs in many ways. I think that could be helpful.
I mean, it's a pretty widely reaching balance mod. Everyone here is playing on tournament balance because we want to, Onslaught series also runs more competitive tournaments, and we want teams to feel like that they're practicing for, what would be the tournament setting for modded Vermintide. Now, the balance mod changes quite a number of things, but it tries to avoid reworks, so it's mostly like number changes. To make things a little bit less oppressive, or to make, very kind of traditionally terrible weapons have a little bit more impact. I think the biggest thing you'll notice is that there is no heal share. That third temp HP option has been replaced on every single career with like a third viable temp HP option, so you have more options for temp. So that's kind of nice. So gone are the days of feeling like you have absolutely nothing to work with on Bounty Hunter because you're not really melee killing anything and the headshot might be inconsistent. I would say overall, the things that have been nerfed most substantially are things like Troll Hammer, Coruscation Staff, Battle Wizard Cheese, Sister of the Thorn Cheese, like things that are, I would say, very, very powerful strategies that could really crush basically anything. Things where you can just cheese the game in a corner. And a lot of things that have been buffed are weapons like Falchion and Axe and Flail, like Salt's Fire Flail. And so, weapons that you would normally consider to be like not meta or maybe not as much raw impact. Oh, it is important to mention, since we're watching a Grail Knight here, Grail Knight has a slightly longer ult cooldown, if I remember correctly, and Mason Sword has been pretty substantially nerfed. It's no longer the I would say straightforward heavy spam weapon that it is on official realm. Um, and you now have to do other things. So you might be push attack lighting, you might be doing heavies, you might be kind of weaving in different types of attacks to make it a bit more of an optimal attack chain depending on the situation. So I think overall it's a good mod. I think it's really important that the mod doesn't look to like rework things or like completely change the game. It's just looking to change numbers, which will in turn change the game, but it's not the same as like, say giving Witch Hunter Captain's shout like, Chaos Wastes lightning that comes from the sky and kills enemies or something, something that's just so abstracted from, what we're used to.
Yeah, it's and as we kind of watch this team go through here, they've got a bile troll that they actually handled with relative aplomb. I'm sure their captain would be happy to see that if they were here. I know you have a team as well, Long, so hopefully maybe we'll get a chance to see some footage from them later in this. As far as kind of the general changes as well, I was going to ask, is there any changes that are ever made to enemies? I don't actually recall if there's any like specific changes to say how elites or specials work in the context of this.
Sorry, so are you saying are there changes to like the AI behavior of,
or even like AI behavior or difficulty upgrades? Because I know I've seen in the past, like, and I think it's just like a Dutch spicy thing, right? Where you have like, is it albino, like storm vermin, anything like that?
Oh, I see. So on these difficulties, I don't think so. I think the closest thing to that, if I remember correctly, is that for some reason on Death Wish, those suicide and gas rats do more damage.
Okay.
But that's basically it. Um, I think it's like Dutch and other difficulty mods where you get more variety of enemies. However, there is actually one exception I just realized. There are two end events in the game. One of them is on Hail Scourge, and the other's on Enchanter's Lair, where you can get these enemies called biochemists. And biochemists are enemies that are in the game files, like they're an unreleased enemy. I think it's just something that Fat Shark tried around with and decided that it wasn't very fun or didn't want to use it or something. And I can see why they're pretty freaking obnoxious in my opinion. Basically what they do is how Hail Scourge kind of shoots out his like kind of acidic ghosts or whatever at you that like run at you and over time. So biochemists are normal special enemies that can also do this on their own. They look like a leech and have a little bit less health than a leech. And yeah, so basically in the Hail Scourge event, one of the notable things is in addition to Hail Scourge shooting ghosts at you, you also will have a couple biochemists shooting ghosts at you. So there are ghosts everywhere. And they're not just knocking you around, they are knocking around the enemies as well. So maybe you thought you were standing in a good spot, and then suddenly like 10 enemies get knocked over into your corner because of the ghosts, and suddenly you're trapped. So I would say the Enchanter's Lair and Hail Scourge end events, a large portion of the difficulty is the chemists. Because they're special that's unfamiliar. They really only appear in Onslaught. And of course the difficulties above Onslaught. And they're really annoying. Like they suck, man, in my opinion. I mean it's part of the challenge, it's part of what makes it exciting and makes it difficult. But I think that's maybe like as long as it's not purely unfun, like say release Beastman or something like that. I think if you have players saying like, "Gosh, I hate this enemy," then it's probably all right. That's kind of the point of the game. You want the players to kind of hate the enemies.
I feel like I forgot to mention we've all kind of collectively, man, isn't that the case with Beastmen that we collectively forgot to mention that they're not in this? We're taking the Games Workshop stance on Beastmen, which is pretending that they don't exist. But anyway, it's brutal.
I find it really funny because I might be getting this history wrong, so feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. But if I remember correctly, Beastmen used to be basically, as prolific on modded as they are in official realm. Like they weren't filtered out or anything like that. And at the time, me and one of my friends who was learning modded realm, we were at like the Dwan's level. We were pretty new, I would say. We were just like, man, we lose every single run where there's a beastman. Like, can't we just like remove them from the game at this point? And people were like, no, 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 they're part of the game. It's kind of a skill issue, right? Right. And then eventually my friend was just like, you know what, screw it. And learned how to make mods just to mod out beastmen. Just because he was so frustrated. And so he made a mod called No Beastman, and it's actually a one-line mod. It's a really funny mod. What it does is it tricks the game into thinking that you don't own Winds of Magic, so it can't spawn Beastmen. That's how it gets it to not spawn Beastmen. Yeah. But it like tricks the game to thinking you don't own it, yet you can also still queue the map. So it's a little funky. But so so then No Beastmen over time just started getting more and more and more of a following. More people were using No Beastmen. Fewer people were complaining that there were no Beastmen. And I think now it's actually like a community standard that people just don't play with Beastmen.
No, I think I can count on the fingers of one hand the number of time that I've seen Beastmen in a Cattle One Death Wish Onslaught or Fight the Tide sort of scenario. So poor guys. I joke because like,
come back.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yep, Cousin Akri was the creator of No Beastmen. I don't think he's part of the community anymore, but we learned the game together, and I appreciate that time. So if he's here listening, but what was I going to say? Oh yeah, so Beastmen do come back in other difficulties, like if you play Onslaught Squared or Linesman or whatever, which are some like difficulties that are kind of meant for people who want a change from the usual, like Dwan's Plus or Dwan's Plus or Dutch or something like that. And I think actually, so Firewatch is the one who made Linesman, which is supposed to be, I feel like a little bit of a progression from Dutch or like a sort of equivalence to Dutch, just like a different kind of difficulty. And he has a rework for Beastman actually, in that mod that I think feels pretty good. He doesn't like substantially change them. He just makes them sort of less oppressive again in how they affect player positioning. They don't knock you back as much and don't stun you as long. And actually, I think they're pretty fun when they're sort of at the power level of the other enemies in the game. So, a shout out to Firewatch for making that mod. I think he's been doing good work there.
Yeah, well, I think Firewatch is captaining a team, and they'll be in tomorrow. But I just want to say the reason that I joke is because obviously Vermintide is based on the Warhammer tabletop game, and before Fantasy was given the boot, it was always Beastmen who were kind of getting the shaft in terms of not being updated ever and things like that. So, and they still are that way in Age of Sigmar, which is the new sort of tabletop replacement. Not that it's so new anymore, but they're always kind of forgotten. So it's really funny that they put them in the game, and then the community just immediately turned around and got rid of them. So the perpetual red, and that's like in lore too. Nobody ever likes Beastmen, so the perpetual redheaded stepchildren of chaos. But I think we've got Uves is good to go. So we're gonna turn off Kiwi Cake for now. Obviously they're chunking along. Obviously Kiwi Cake has done a good job of preparing them for this difficulty because they seem to be moving relatively smoothly here. But it's a bit of a dangerous situation here for Uves's team. Let's see if we can pull them up here. There they are. Hello, Uves. Welcome to the stream. Happy to have you with us. And I was just saying, your team here on Kata 3, Dwan's was in a bit of a rough spot there, but they look like they handled it quite well.
Yeah. They just died sadly to the last event.
Attends, on lèche même les assassins, on lèche tout.
So now they are doing all the map
On a
again.
mis 3 minutes à...
Well, there's no unfortunate that happens, but it is the way. So where was this team? Tell us, where was this team at when you got started with them here for this Captain Series?
It's a bit mixed up. So I would say like most of the people in this group has like at least 1k hour in the game. So you have like Bobley, he has like around 4k hours. He's like a very decent Quiff player. So you have Alan also, is pretty good. So there's kind of a good skill in the team, but they definitely have to learn like all the triggers, how to make good builds for the difficulty that they played, and so maybe they could have done C3 D1 plus if they want to suffer a little bit, but I don't think that's the good way to approach modded. Maybe go step by step.
Sure.
And let them enjoy a little bit the victory.
Yeah, to some growth.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, you know, you
Yeah.
want them to keep coming back. You don't want to drive them off.
Yeah.
So,
And they still have to learn a lot of the, like some basic stuff, trigger management, fighting with a boss while there's a horde. So, you know, go step by step. I think it's better. But in terms of skill, they're not bad. Yeah, they're not bad. Like especially, I think Alan and Bobley can definitely go plus soon. So yeah, I didn't have that much problem, you know, I didn't have to go back to the super basic of the game, like.
yeah. Yeah, it's interesting to get kind of different perspectives from different captains because obviously, you know, we've got all skill levels here. So some people are starting out with a bit of advantage. Some people do kind of like as we've heard previous. I think it was Chance and Johnny said they basically have to start at kind of stage 1 on understanding how kind of this modded difficulty works. So a bit of a step up then to have your team already relative or somewhat familiar, I guess, with with some of the concepts. I mean, in that case, what does sort of training / coaching, what does that look like if you already have a team that's competent, that they're already at C3? What do you start with then?
First of all, for me was to make them ghoul builds, because it was a bit. I don't know if that's a good word in English, like catastrophe. Like the build, the build they were using was like, like I had to go back to the start. But the training session is more gonna be like, okay, like communicate. There is this holding spot, there is this trigger. This is how you can manage with this position. So it's more like you have to show them how to place, show them how the events can be done in a more comfortable way. I'm not very behind them, like looking specially in their gameplay. I don't think that's what they want. It's a bit too much of a backseat, I think, for them. So, and I think they also want the fun, you know, they want having fun. So if I'm too much around, that's not what they will like. So I have to find something between, you know. So yeah, the coaching with them is mostly gonna be like show them the spot, show them the triggers. Use maybe if the comp doesn't work, you talk with them to see like a different approach, because you don't want to say, hey guys, I know how to beat the map. I know every comp like that can work on the map, but maybe those guys don't want to play those characters, you know. And so they're playing C3D ones. Maybe you can adapt also easily to what they like to play. Because if you play, for example, like Plus, it's gonna be a bit harder for them to play what they want.
Sure.
Like, yeah, so it's more about having fun also at the end and meeting new people, I think. Because now that I know them, I can take them, I don't know, with my group and play some Dutch Spice a little bit, show them how it's done, and you know, I think it's more like just playing 2 weeks, I think.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, no, that's
I mean, and
perfectly fair.
they are all French. They are all French, and they all know each other. So I think they will continue to play after
Good.
that, you know. So that's pretty good, yeah.
Yeah, happy. Honestly, happy to hear it. Yeah, it's exactly, you know, it's the idea.
behind the community, right, is to get people playing together. I mean, the roles that we see the team playing here right now, was this pretty much where everybody started in terms of what they wanted to play? Like, you know, I believe it's Alan on the or on the Unchained, sorry, and you know your Grail Knight, Ironbreaker, etc. Is this is about where everybody started in terms of what they wanted to play?
Like the question is like if, for example, like Loktar wanted to play IB first in this map.
Or like, yeah, did you have anybody who had to kind of shift around roles, or was this just sort of where everybody slotted in?
I think they wanted to make a compromise. Like, okay, for this game, I can be the tank, but I'm not gonna be the tank for the 3 other map or the 4 other maps. Like, let's switch around, you know, for every map. So not everyone is playing like IB or like it's pretty diverse. Yeah.
Do you think that, or I guess hearing that makes me think, so we have our IB now, and say somebody switched characters later, that they could share ideas. Oh, when I'm on IB, I like to do this, or oh, I noticed this instead, and they kind of like share ideas like that.
They could do that, yeah. I mean, that's a great idea, to be honest.
To like have them play, have a personal perspective, and
Yeah,
someone is either
definitely. Like,
yeah.
for example, on Akbane Waystalker, Bobley is using it a lot, and he was giving advice to Glug on his knowledge and experience of that. So yeah, they definitely shared what they learn. Yeah.
So we are entering here on this particular fight because we were talking a lot on those biochemists. Did that cause this team any difficulty, like having to learn the fight?
Yeah, this is the most hard part, to be honest, here on this event. Is keeping everything consistent. Don't get overwhelmed too much. Like, it's a bit the type of event you are on a clock, you know. You have to keep killing consistently while you DPS the boss, because you don't want to stay there 30 minutes. And I think they are doing pretty fine, to be honest. I don't want to jinx it, because 30 minutes earlier, they died. Like, the boss was like 10% HP. The struggle, I think, on this event is like the temp HP. Especially, I think Alan is playing kill temp. Green is also playing kill temp, and you don't have that much temp HP to get in here, especially kill temp. Like, you get the Chaos Warrior, but that's not that much, and the biochemist can be terrible with the dots.
Do you know if because sustainability is such a difficult part of this fight, and it's kind of hard to see, maybe the Unchained has it, but are they running like Barkskin for that extra sustain and the extra defense?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Barkskin is a must, I think, in modded. For most of the classes, I think Barkskin is the way to go.
So, for a boss battle like Hail Scourge or whoever it is at the moment. Oh, I think that's Hail Scourge, maybe just in a different language.
It's Hail Scourge, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I've never heard of Gargoulen Fiaflu, but there you go, Fiaflu. But all right, I like it. It's good. It's a change of name. But you know, for a set piece boss battle like this, what does kind of preparation and training look like? Like, how do you explain to a team how to handle this on this difficulty level?
So first of all, like, if you talk about Hail Scourge, you need to protect like the guy who will focus the biochemist. The biochemist is the priority absolute in this event, because they can, how to say that, they can like, if you don't kill them, they will keep respawning and respawning and respawning. So at the end, you cannot do anything. So the priority is to keep killing the biochemist, then you also have to make sure that to kill the rest, of course, be healthy on temp HP. But I think the priority is like keeping the event safe. Like, don't prioritize too much on the boss. Like, make sure that the event is clear. Like, for example, Into the Nest is also a good example. Like, the boss is not that much of a problem. The problem is like all the storm vermins that can accumulate if you don't kill the things, you know. So yeah. For Rail Scourge, stay. Oh, this is going bad now. I'm looking at.
Yeah, they're still in it.
They're still in, but you know.
So as you guys were saying, as you fall behind in this event, you kind of accumulate debt.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
the event is about keeping a certain pace with the enemies, particularly the biochemists, but even those waves, because there's some cap, but there isn't really a cap on like what can spawn. And so like when someone goes down, like one, it's very difficult to res them because the biochemists will always interrupt the res, like the ghosts will stop you from being able to res. And two, like that's time where your team has less output, like you're not keeping the event in check as much anymore. And so I think usually when things go wrong in this event, it's like dominoes. Like one pillar starts to fall, and then three others start to fall, and then it becomes kind of intractable, even if the players are very skilled.
It's a domino effect, yeah. I think it's the same for almost every Lord boss, actually. Like Warcamp, Nest.
Sure, yeah, things can get out of hand relatively quick. I mean, that does make perfect sense. I mean, to their credit, it does look like they've stabilized a bit here, and they nearly have him done, so they might actually be able to.
Yeah, but you know, they died. He was even lower before. Like.
Oh really? Oh, that's,
yeah. He was about this.
That's unfortunate.
Let's say he was about this HP when they died. So let's see if they can do better.
But one Lord fight I think that doesn't quite have the same feel is actually the Lord fight no one plays, which is great. Because the arena is so favorable to the heroes, like you can kite in it forever. So even things that on apart, you can kite for an extremely long time. And it looks like they killed Hailed Scourge. They're moving on to the end of the map.
Okay, they're doing it, but let's. You can still die. You can still die.
The ends of the map are always the scariest. You have this, or what's the other one? Any of the Drakenfels maps, you never know.
Oh yes, I died to that one, bro. Like, you do the end event and you die after that.
Yeah, you feel so good. Like, I got killed by a gate in a tunnel, just to some rats, or I fell down a hole.
They did though.
But we got
GG to them.
There you go.
GG.
A successful completion. Wait, what's Hail Scourge's name in French again?
I think it's Fier Fléau.
Fier Fléau. Okay, I like that.
Fier Fléau.
It's cool. I'm into it. I'm into it. Well,
I have the game in English, to be honest. So.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah, I've just never seen it before, so I quite like it. Obviously we got some other teams are going to bring in and showcase or what have you. So now that they're on the backside of that victory there, and they managed to do it after they weren't able to the first or however many times around. Any final sort of thoughts on your team and the progress that they've made here?
Oh, I don't know what to say, mate. I don't know. Like, good job to them. They had the strong mental to redo all the map. That's a good thing.
Good, great. Well, thank you so much, Uvis. We appreciate you joining us and, of course, taking part in all of this and coaching a team up. And I'm glad that you got some people to play with out of it as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So let's go ahead and pull up Team JC here. They're another team that doesn't, unfortunately, we don't have their coach in here today, so we can't really pick their brain about it, but I want to give them an opportunity to at least get some play time and we'll see kind of
I don't care.
They've made as a team and see how JC has done coaching them.
Far left. Far left.
Yeah, I know. Here for,
no, I meant
the
exit.
Oh, nice. Let's go. Get out of it. I feel like we saw the pit a little bit earlier with
push.
first team. I think it was Johnny's team who was playing on the pit. So it was good to
God, this
get
is
some
tight.
perspectives on it. And I apologize because I imagine the source volume is a little loud right there. It's always going to be that way, unfortunately, on these transitions. I should say. And so you're all getting full Slayer action there at home. But again, another interesting discussion there with Uvis. I like the bringing up the fact that, you know, all these teams, they don't all start out completely kind of without knowledge, right? Like there's a baseline of for some people who already have experience with the modded difficulties that you kind of have to learn up from. And I feel like it's something that when you're looking in from the outside in, right, as somebody who doesn't play a lot of the modded, it just really finds it entertaining to watch. You don't always think about the fact that, like, even within modded itself, you have to kind of learn as you grow through all these different difficulties. There's no kind of perfect state.
Yeah, and it's all about that learning curve and like knowing what you can and cannot do. Like we saw earlier, they're backwards to the walls at a finale event for Athelian, and it was our Kruber. I think they're using a one-headed sword, and they were just trying to get away from a storm. All right, like a storm had been called, and it's coming towards them. So they're trying to get away from the wind. There are two just clan rats standing right in front of him. He goes to shove it, but because of the stagger mechanic being a little altered and things are a little changed here on this difficulty, he couldn't just like shove them and walk past them. So the storm eventually picked them up. And it's those little things like, well, I can't just like push my way through this with any old weapon. All of those are just skills and facts and a whole bunch of different things that just build on each other as you continue to play. So yeah, there's definitely this like what's in store for me when I start playing, even if it's C1.
This is quite funny. Just JC in the chat right now, unfortunately at work, so doesn't have really a chance to talk. But all three of them, except for Null, were a Weave team. I'm assuming Null is the zero right there. They've improved so much, and he's proud of their teamwork. That's awesome. And then as far as the Slayer goes, he asked the Slayer if he wanted to neuter the ult effects to remove the red screen, and he said, "Why would I do that?" So there you go. Hell yeah, that must be Burrowing King who's playing the Slayer. So absolute absolute Chad behavior right there. Why would you do that? Indeed. The only unfortunate side effect is that we get to see the red screen whether we like it or not. But still very funny that he's good to go with that.
Regardless of difficulty, I am all about immersion. All right, like I'm even noticing head bob here, and I love it.
Yeah.
So
you find my gameplay really cursed because I'm as anti-immersion as possible. I've modded the game to remove all the textures. Everything looks like RuneScape graphics.
No,
I play with captions. I don't play with sound. I like don't have head bob, no screen shake, huge FOV. It's like playing, Doom 2016 speedrunning or something. It's anti-immersion. I'm sorry.
I'm all immersion. I'll sit there and be like, "Well, did you see the crack in the store? It was only here because of a particular magical weapon, and that weapon, like the environment provides details and information, and I am a glutton for lore and immersion."
I like immersion in games that I'm not sweating in.
That's the only time you're supposed to sweat and have immersion.
Yeah, no, that's true. I don't think I would play it as much if I didn't have the immersion, to be fair. I quite like it, but I can see how for the purposes of kind of difficulty maxing this, I can see it why having it at Minecraft or RuneScape graphics or what have you is probably the play. Let's be honest. Like, I do have head bob turned off, to be fair, because it makes me feel ill. So
I agree. I can't.
It's too much for me.
But actually, I mean, one other reason that I think is a little more fair, the reasons that I have, for turning off a lot of stuff is because the game runs better. And
That's true.
yeah, and I think like when you're playing unmodded, your computer is already freaking out, especially if you're the host, because the game was written well for, say, Cataclysm Legend difficulty, but a lot of spawning new enemies is tied to CPU performance and threads, and so like a lot of your frame dips are the fact that there are more enemies on screen, and so when you spawn in a whole lot of enemies, then your frames are just going to go to crap, right? So um, so some players will, like myself, turn down or find ways to kind of get around a lot of the, um, you know, uh, like graphical barriers in the game in order to make it run better. Because I don't know about you, but if I'm playing a game more competitively and I don't have at least like 150 frames per second or something, I just like, oh no.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's actually. Go ahead, please.
No, after you.
The frames per second has got me. I've only recently started playing past 60 FPS. I also only recently upgraded my computer, so that's helpful too. But I am finally able to play at like a 90 or a 120 as well, and I have noticed a significant change. Is Vermintide a lot like other FPS games where the more frames you have, you actually do more actions per second?
So I would say that your FPS in this game doesn't actually impact things like your damage or how damage is calculated very much. It just impacts how often something is updated to the server. And so if you, or sorry, to other players because there's no server. Um, so if you're hosting, right, and you have 30 FPS, the game just can't spawn in as many enemies. And so the game will generally be easier. Um, and enemies will also have a more difficult time pathing to you because they can't update, they can't track your position as quickly. There's some more like in-depth reasons and technical reasons, but probably not the focus for today's stream. I'd say that soft explanation is probably okay. Um,
Interesting.
there's also some things with network that affect damage, though. Like, for instance, I don't know the exact details. I'm sure someone in the chat can explain it. But like Warrior Priest playing on client versus playing on host affects, how easily you can regenerate that green HP with the green HP talent, or how much damage you can do with the bubbles. So there are some things that are like client side versus host side preferred, and some things where having, certainly having lower FPS will just make the game easier. Um, but like usually I'm not hosting because my host is brutal. So I just like to have higher FPS so that the game feels better to play. But it's not like changing my damage or anything like that. You don't need like amazing hardware to be a great player in this game.
Right. Yeah. No, that makes sense. I mean, I was gonna say obviously I genuinely try to keep it about 60 frames per second just for kind of ease of use and ease on the computer or what have you. I have recently been playing Darktide in 120, and it is amazing. The difference is genuinely noticeable, and it kind of bugs my eyes out to be honest. So, you know, it does bug my eyes out, but it does make things a little bit easier. So it's
Ooh.
interesting. It's one of, again, many unconsidered, I think, factors about these higher difficulty levels, because you are kind of, as you said, Lonk, you're pushing the game to a sort of extreme limit, right, in terms of its actual processing power, what the game is built to handle. It's one of the reasons why, if people have been maybe noticed, and some people might not notice or what have you, the bodies just disappearing automatically, right? That's all part of it as well, to just kind of keep the visual clutter on the screen down. So yeah, it's an interesting aspect. I mean, Long, obviously, I think you said your team wasn't available to play today, but I'll give you an opportunity here as we're kind of watching or continuing to watch Team JC. If there's anything you wanted to say about your coaching experience.
Sure. So, I think coaching this squad was really fun. So the players are Scrag, Dolphinator, Skull, and Dots. And I think they have a really good mindset and they're very hard workers and really good at practicing the game. And they also all wanted more of like a coaching style where I focused on, teaching how to think about the game and the fundamentals and less like let's memorize every single spot on the map, which is cool because that's my preferred style. There are some groups in the past where they're just like, nope, we just want to like memorize how to play the game. I'm like, okay, sure, but it's not as fun. Um, I think they're a group that they're having a lot of fun, but they're also definitely have some like a little bit of frustration with some of the difficult, really difficult parts of the game, like certain kite events that are difficult and stuff like that. Um, and I guess if they're listening, I just want to assure them that like they've improved so much over the last 2 weeks, and like considering where they started and where they are now, I think their expectations of themselves are a little high, and like they've been doing really well. And actually, in our one of our last practices, we were playing some plus, and it was going just fine because they started on C3 Dwans without even ever trying C1 Dwans. They skipped from Kata to C3 Dwans. So, um, I'm really proud of my squad. I think they've got a good attitude, and I think everyone brings a cool dynamic to the team. Um, but yeah, I mean, I mostly focus on like how to think about the game and again how to like derive the formula rather than regurgitate it. I think this makes for players that are more self-sufficient and more able to like learn stuff after I'm gone, if that makes sense.
It
You
does.
teach them how to fish rather than just giving them fish, and
Fair enough.
and yeah, I mean, my hope is that they feel motivated to stick around in the community at least a little bit, and I think they'd mesh just fine with random LFGs or pubs, or if they want to keep sticking with this squad and look to do tournaments or something, I think they would definitely succeed. But
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it's good to have a nice approach like that to really empower the players. I mean, it's something I think a couple of the coaches that we've had on have kind of discussed, getting people more comfortable just with the higher difficulty levels, getting them playing the higher difficulty levels, and just kind of working on almost expanding the community, for lack of a better word, and the amount of availability we have for these higher level plays. Watching these guys, of course, take down a bile troll, they're doing it pretty well here. It's a little bit of a challenge. I see a lot of skulls, which is a little worrisome, but we'll see if they can work their way out of this situation before we kick around to some of our other teams here. Might have another captain in to join us in just a little bit as well, because obviously we want to give captains as much time to talk about their squads as possible here in this event, as that is the theme. I think they've got the bile troll down. So I mean they're doing pretty well, though. I feel like they've been stuck at this particular area for quite some time. But I mean maybe that's just to be expected.
Also, one thing to note, right, is like how long is the average Cataclysm quick play run, right? It's maybe like 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they've been in the pit right now for 38 minutes and 24 seconds, right? And so you can see that in the bottom right, there's a timer, it shows the map timer. And they've only just cleared the mid event and they're moving into the final area of the map. So their expected clear time right now is like nearly an hour, right? And like the fatigue of playing these modded difficulties is a very real factor, right? Like how well do you play 40 minutes in when you have 3 people on death's door
Yeah, it's
versus
really hard.
how well do you play 20 minutes in with no one on death's door, right? So I think that's a big part of. I don't know why they're quitting here.
Maybe they feel like it's unwinnable with the current health they have.
No, I doubt that.
No, it seemed pretty strong.
Yeah,
We'll
I
have to get.
actually have no idea what's going on here. Maybe someone needs to reset or something like
Yeah,
that.
probably something that
Yeah,
we
it could have
couldn't
been a glitch or
possibly begin
something.
to comprehend.
Yeah. But anyways, like yeah, that's a big part of modded though, is that fatigue. And actually, I've helped coach some teams for tournaments from, like lower level tiers to even the highest possible tier. And one of the biggest factors that separates like good teams from good tournament teams is how well are you able to play for like 3 straight hours in a tournament setting, clear 4 maps in a row. I mean, that's a different skill than just clearing a single map really well, right? And so some of the teams out there that are really good at clearing some of the hardest maps in the game aren't necessarily the best tourney teams because it's a different set of skills. And so, and this is like kind of an aspect of Vermintide that is never really true, right? Like when you play on official realm, you can take breaks whenever you want. Like you're never really stuck there to play multiple maps in a row and competing against other teams. But that's just how it is in how we've set it up here in the modern realm, at least for the tournament setting. Although I will say, for those watching who don't know, most of the engagement in modded realm is actually just pickup games. So like people will go to like a server and just LFG for some Dwans or whatever. And there it's pretty chill. You could still take breaks between maps and no one's expecting to win. They're just, trying to play and have fun. Maybe you'll see some weird comps or whatever. So, this like tournament setting that we talk about is definitely something that will attract a lot of players. But like tournaments only happen once every X number of months, right?
Right.
It varies quite a lot. And so most of the engagement, like day by day, is, I'll be looking in the server and I'm like, oh, look, some players are playing some Dutch right now, or some players are playing some Dwans right now, or something like that. And you can go, talk with them or watch stream or, join in if someone has to go. It's like that kind of thing. It's like pickup games. So
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think that's important to clarify, honestly.
Yeah, and it's something that I think it's not just I want to pick it apart a little more. It's more than just an individual skill because you're talking about fatigue. It's mental fatigue. It's physical fatigue. You're also not just clicking and moving your wrists or your arms and both hands involved. You're also making how many mental decisions, how many actions per second, per minute are you and your team like actively doing that at this level of Vermintide for, like you said, an extended period of time, 3 hours, at least in the tournament, right? You never know how much time that people are able to commit to like practice and whatnot, but still 3 hours in the tournament setting. There's a lot of things riding on that because it's also tournament. You got to get in a certain mindset, but you can't bog yourself down and like be overly competitive and start making like poor judgment calls that cause you to not be successful in your maps. How do you go through all that, process all that, and also not like check your ego, check your emotions, and still be able to play and be successful? That is
for sure.
a huge skill set.
Yeah, and that's actually one thing I emphasize to my players at the beginning is, if you're like playing on your own, react to the game how you want. But when we're in sort of like the classroom, the mindset has to be good, right? We're not here to, get mad at the game or mad at each other or anything like that. Because, I mean, in a practical sense, that's like wasted mental energy. And in like a social sense, like we're here to have fun and learn about the game, right? And so, um, that was definitely something that I just always emphasized at the beginning. And I've never really had too much of an issue with it in my years coaching. But I sort of just make sure to point it out. And it's like just like a tip for those who maybe struggle with that kind of thing in really any game is like if you're just playing for no reason, whatever, like you can get mad at the video game, it doesn't really matter. But if you are trying to improve or win or get better, like that's mental energy that's not going in the right place, right? And it takes a lot of mental energy um to react to stuff. Your brain as an organ uses quite a lot of resources, right? So yeah,
I think
yeah.
there's a certain level too of just like as much as frustration is a thing, and that there's definitely times that you're going to be frustrated. I mean, when you're playing on these difficulties as they are, I think that the sort of success on like Cata 3 Deathwish Onslaught or Plus or Dutch Spicy or whatever horrible thing you're inflicting on yourself, they're not, success is not guaranteed, right? Like the most likely outcome of most of your runs is that you wipe, right? I would say. So it's important that people just, get an understanding of that, right? You're in it for the difficulty. You're not in it just because of the thrill of winning or what have you. It's all part of the process. It's very Souls-like, I guess, in that way. But we're looking at, by the way, Altieri's team right now. I think we're going to try and get Altieri in here to talk a little bit about their squad in just a minute, as soon as we get confirmation that they're here and ready to go. But they're doing the pit as well and kind of just fighting their way up the stairs towards the mid event. Seen a lot of the pit today. I feel like this is a map. Last time I was watching Fight the Tide, we saw a lot of pit that time too. I don't know why. I don't know why it feels popular. It feels hard to me, but it seems to crop up a lot.
It's one of those maps where there are particular points in it, like as we come up towards the hideout, you kind of play, you're like, okay, we can get to this point. This is where a major challenge is. Obviously, you have those other triggers and whatnot, but especially in this particular area. And just kind of like to piggyback off of what Lonk was saying on our look at their time. At this current point in time, is this the same team? No. They are 18 minutes in, while before another team. Yeah, 18 minutes in, whereas another person will be playing. They were around 30, 40 minutes in. And to kind of, again, take another step back and... Oh! He just banked off that one straight up. When you take a look at this in a tournament setting, and it's the investment into the time. If you're playing 40 minutes on an attempt for a particular map, that's a 3-hour event, right? And you got a number of maps you need to complete. You've invested 1/3 of your playing time directly into one attempt. That's a particular decision, and we've seen a lot of teams do that. Be like, you know what? We could do screaming, we could do whatever the map pools in that particular tournament, right? Because we switch them up. But they'll be like, we'll do this one, and we know that this particular map is a time investment, not a sync necessarily, because you're going for the win, but it's going to be a large time investment. And you see teams make particular decisions to do that.
Yes, no, definitely. It's interesting to see teams kind of just throw themselves in wholeheartedly, and honestly, just put this sheer amount of time into the game is impressive in and of itself. But looks like we have, let's see if we can pull Altieri up here. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Welcome, Altieri. Happy to have you with us here to talk about your team today.
Hi.
Well, to start with, I guess, we're watching your team. They're about to do the mid-event here on the pit. I was just curious, what was and I've been asking everybody this, what was the kind of the starting position here for your squad, their level of experience, and kind of where they all came from in this particular captain series?
Yeah, also I know that Stoppit and Dantovic, they were already part of the last captain series. They were coached by Slashcakes in normal colored ones. And yeah, now they wanted to go a little bit more up on color street ones, and they also wanted to match together, so they both are pre-made. The same is for Alex and John, they're both pre-made, but they were coming from official into modded. And I wanted a little bit of challenge, so they also started with color street ones.
Seems like a big step up to start on Cata 3 ones. I mean, where did you kind of begin with the team, especially given that experience gap? Where did we start in terms of the sort of training, let's say?
Yeah. Also, it was pretty hard for them to make this this jump from official to Deathwish, especially. I mean, the stagger is way less, and then you have to play a little bit different with the enemies and everything, so the survivability was low. And I see sadly they wiped now.
Yeah.
That
was
lich grab. That leech grab was crazy.
I know, but
the vertical suck. Oh no!
I hate to see it. Yeah, that's bad luck. I mean, it's bad luck, but it's a good teaching opportunity. I mean, where do you talk about what do you talk about with them when they wipe? Like, how do you break that down?
So also this event overall is kind of hard for them. They have a hard time with kiting. And yeah, to continue what I said before, there's problems with the survivability. You can see it also here in this comp. It's kind of tanky. So everyone is also with normally a lot of temp HP gen. And even the Grey Knight is not a Grey Knight with a single-handed sword, how most people play it, and also not with Mason's sword. What would be the second most popular option? It's fucking sword and shield. With dagger temp HP, he had a much easier time to survive with that, and also to to just stay a little bit more safer against the chip damage from the trash. And what they do to survive is normally they hold in the positions. Yeah? So they have a huge problem with kiting. And in the pit event, we do exactly that as a kiting event. So yeah, they had always a lot of. I see they had a hard time in this event. So sometimes they beat it, sometimes not. But the staying together, moving together, this is definitely a skill what they have to train.
Yeah,
I think
makes
it's one of
sense.
the biggest adjustments from playing official realm is you never really have to kite an official. I guess like some weave players might be used to it, although I don't really know the weave scene too much. But like in a lot of random, Dwan's events, you can hold out quite a number of things, but there are some cases where you kind of have to kite to ensure your safety, or certainly if something goes wrong and people start dying, then you have to kite enemies. And I mean, it's very scary, right? When you have like 6 storm vermin all doing running attacks at you and they can't get staggered. Like that's a huge difficulty spike up from, the normal like catapult play that people are used to. So I think kiting is tough for a lot of teams to learn.
Yeah, also that you have to watch out for your teammates, what they do. In official, this is something, or at least I have not done this much in official, that I was actually watching where is my team and where should I position. It was more like, yeah, I go here now.
Mm-hmm.
And what the other guys do is
yeah
uninteresting for me, but here it does definitely matter, especially in a kite loop.
In the context of this team, was there a lot of kind of shifting back and forth on who was going to play what role, or did everybody kind of come in with a specific sort of idea of what they wanted to play in mind?
Well, it was relatively straightforward, so everyone was like a little bit, yeah, I want to try this and this and this. And then we were starting with the picks they wanted. Stop It was always Ironbreaker right from the start, and Dentist Switch was always here Grey Knight. And the other two guys, they were a little bit, yeah, let's see what we play. There was first the thinking of Witch Hunter Captain, he wanted to train that, but the survivability was so low when he played Witch Hunter Captain. And the weapon did not matter. Damage P was just not enough. So he was like, he wants to go more tanky. And then, yeah, the first option was then Warrior Priest. And yeah, the problem if you have Ironbreaker, Warrior Priest, and Grey Knight is that the sniping is suffering a lot.
Yeah, I was just gonna say,
yeah,
you're a
the
bit
most
down on that.
easy, yeah, the most easy consistent sniping pick you can match in there is then Waystalker.
Does this put a lot of pressure on, or did it, I guess, put a lot of pressure on the Waystalker player though to kind of like keep up the special killing with this comp, or is that something that everybody talked about and agreed on, or was it just kind of that's the way it's going to be?
Yeah, it was surprisingly well. I think for two facts. So the first thing is the team is kind of tanky. So if someone gets hooked or assassined or leeched, normally he can survive some seconds. Also in enemies, because yeah, Ironbreaker, Warrior Priest, they are super tanky. Granite is getting the temp HP back out of such a bad situation, and yeah, Waystalker is the guy who can snipe. So yeah, the self-aware is definitely better than to care about a team. So it was going okay in a good direction, and on top, if something really goes shit, we have Concoction on Warrior Priest with the healing bubble. So with the Granite Potion, this is an extra safety up for someone who got stoned.
Good, yeah, makes a lot of sense. I don't know, Ishka, were you about to chime in there just a second ago?
Yeah, just kind of piggybacking on the tankiness of it all, especially as a player, I especially like Grail Knight. I'm sorry, not Grail, IB, because of Gromero, because it is that extra hit. It is that extra tankiness, the sustainability. It also allows you to make mistakes. Mistakes you should learn from, but you're allowed to make mistakes because of that. And I think that's all in the sense of learning. It's extremely helpful.
Well, also, like, really top IB players, they'll use it as a free stagger. So, like, if they want the equivalent of a shout ult, they'll just, like, stop blocking for a sec and just take the hit. Because they don't,
Yes.
and they leverage it as a tool. And I think that's, when I was giving, like, a university lecture yesterday about, like, managing resources, and I mentioned that Grom Curse is a resource, this is what I mean. It's like, at the top level, every single thing that could possibly impact the horde. Oh no, the suicide gas on the Groover. Is like something you can leverage, right? So
Yeah. Also this team is away from that thinking at the moment, but
for sure.
yeah. Also even when we started with Sword and Executioners on Granite as a real damage pick, but even then we had we had this funny thing that Ironbreaker is out damaging him with his dual hammers. And yeah, now he's at the moment he's definitely using the Gromry more for aggressive, also for the aggressive part that he can deal some damage with the dual hammers, what is kind of funny. But yeah, in Kalos Read once it's still working, so let's go.
Nice, yeah.
Does Curse I mean I guess you just said it, so can you confirm this? Does Curse stagger knock back on Kata 3 or any of the other Katas?
Sorry.
Here, like in Dwan's, like if you were to use the curse as a resource for long, does that stagger affect all enemies, like on all difficulties?
Yeah, you stagger them. So
Yeah,
especially cool on getting aggro again. Also, if you have as an example, there's monks coming, a huge wave of monks, and you get this passive off. So after the stagger, they take most of the time the guy staying the closest to them as a new target. So you can definitely do something again. Also, I would say that's the most useful situations is versus monks. But of course, this is working against every enemy.
I mean, why do you think that they're having a bit of a struggle here clearing the beach? What's going on with that? And I mean, I guess what would you say to them at this stage?
I mean, they have only Waystalker as a special sniper.
Fair enough.
So they're tanky as I said, but yeah, it can also go, of course, quickly to shit. And the beach is also, at least for me, it is the hardest part of this map.
Absolutely, the beach is just as difficult as the beginning of Athol, in my opinion. Like this is a really hard space to be in.
Yeah, and they also need a stone. I think they should also fall back there. I was often saying that, especially with Ironbreaker, you can easily reroute these enemies also with an ult or something like that, and then drop off or even drop as a team, buying you a lot of time, and maybe also the time you need to make some shots off with Waystalker to kill some specials.
Sure.
So yeah, the stone is definitely life for them.
Okay. Well, I mean, how do you feel about the general progress your team has made over the course of this kind of like event and culminating in today?
Yeah. Also, the hardest part was to bring them all together, because there was always one missing. I was already asking them for a team name, and yeah, one was like, so never full team. I think as a real full team we played in this 2 weeks 4 times or something like that.
Oh wow, okay, so not a ton of practice.
Yeah, so they played with a lot of other guys also. We were subbing in from Ortega's team, from Coffee's team, some guys. Also, we as captains were subbing in sometimes. So overall, it's kind of cool to see that they were at least coming for the last 2 days together. And this was also the 2 days where they was making the most progress, I would say. Just because they had finally, they did finally play together and they know, hey, this is then my team, and. So it's kind of cool.
Alrighty, yeah, no, that
Yeah.
is. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Altieri, and I'm glad we got a chance to watch your team play. I know that you guys were originally scheduled to play yesterday. Are you also running, or tomorrow? I'm sorry. Are you still running that as well, or did you guys pick today instead?
Yeah, also we picked today.
Okay.
And then let's see if they want to play, but then definitely outside of the stream, just for
Cool.
fun.
All right. Well, any
Okay.
closing thoughts here before we rotate to our next team?
I just hope that they beat this map also, because then I have 2 maps beaten, and this would be kind of cool for them to see that they have also made progress with completions and not only with progressing a map.
Awesome.
Only progressing a map gives no points. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, unfortunately, yes, but also fortunately, they're not fighting for points, right? They're learning. They're learning. I mean, it seems like they're trying. They'll get off this beach eventually. I have no doubt about it. We've seen them. We've seen them off the beach, so they'll be there. All right, thank you, Altieri. Appreciate it so much, man.
Thanks. Have a nice day. Ciao.
Thank you. You too.
It's always good to get some more perspectives there from yet another coach here whose team, unfortunately, yeah, they're still trapped on that beach.
So close. The gutter
so
said
close.
nope.
That beach is not their friend. It's hard. It's a hard bit. I mean, he said it himself. It's a very hard bit, and it's a challenge for the team to clear it, and understandably so. On that section, we're back to Kiwi Cake here as we enter into kind of the last half hour of the event today. Obviously it's been a good learning experience. I feel like every time I turn on one of these captain streams, I pick some stuff up that I had never really thought about before. Some things I think are more, you watch a couple of Fight the Tide and you do pick them up, but just in general, there's always something new to be learned.
Well,
For
yeah,
sure.
and if you wanted to check out the university that we did this whole past week, we've got it up on YouTube. We've got highlight videos. If this is interesting and you're like, oh wait, maybe I want to pick up some more stuff, by all means, everything that we've done this week. Big shout out to Janoti and everybody else who participated in that. I really love that you called that a university seminar, or I'm sorry, not a seminar. What did you call it? A
Lecture?
Lecture. Thank you. Yeah. Really leaning into it. I love it.
Oh, that's
that
right.
is
You
hard,
did one yesterday,
guys,
didn't
just
you,
because you
Juan?
didn't see it.
I did. It was called How to Carry Without Mechanics, Role Enabling and Problem Solving. And I think it was to kind of offset some of the deep nerdiness of some of the previous exciting. It's the next end event. You can see there's a lot more stuff now. You can't just kill Scarrick immediately. But anyways, kind of offset a lot of the very deeply mechanical talks that people were giving. I just kind of wanted to help teach some street smarts, like it's great to know how the slot system works and how all the triggers work and respawns and everything, but at the end of the day, how are you managing against the horde of rats in sort of a macro kind of perspective? So that was what that lecture was on. And there was also some really cool lectures there that you should definitely check out if you're interested or super nerdy about it. Into the Nest here, really tough event. I'd say as a transition from official realm. You can see that it spawns in SV constantly, and they're barely able to damage Scarrick at all. And you actually kind of get to learn his moveset because you've probably never seen it before if you just play Cataclysm play and he dies in 1 second. His moveset's actually really scary.
It is, yeah.
It's really strong. He just normally gets nuked. So a lot of his attacks go through block, or they will heavily knock you back, substantially knock you back after you get hit by them. And the hitbox on some of his side swings is just completely unreasonable, in my opinion. It's nowhere close to matching the visual. It just hits you from a mile away, knocks you back, breaks your block, whatever. And the thing with Scarrick is he will identify a singular player to follow at any given time, similar to how bosses aggro. And since a lot of teams tend to kite in this event and go in circles, Skerrick is like chasing after one person in particular in the middle of that kite. And trying to hit through the horde to hit
Right.
them. So it's very scary. You can see that the kite can sometimes go wrong, and you'll just get absolutely piled on by the rest of the horde. I don't think that res is going to happen personally. It's not looking good. But fortunately, you do respawn inside the event, or you should. Although I've seen some bugged spawns recently. Oh my gosh, the enemies actually backed off. That was kind of fortuitous.
Yeah, they got it.
Yeah. I've seen some bug spawns recently, but you're supposed to spawn inside the event. So as long as your team can survive and kite, they can get you up. So one viable strategy I've seen for teams here is they don't really care about dying. They just care about making sure at least one or two people can be alive at any given time. And they just trust that they'll kill Skerrick over a very long time, whatever extra credit they can get in.
Sure.
I think careers like Shade are really good on this because if you're going in a circle and not really damaging him much, then every time you have Cloak of Pain off cooldown, you can just send in an ult, and get a little bit of progress in. And if you sort of repeatedly do this, you'll eventually kill him in a sort of safe manner.
Yeah. Get your stab in, and work it out. I mean, they seem to be handling this well. Unfortunately, I don't think Uvis is around anymore, so we can't bring him back to kind of chat about it. But it is interesting just based off what they were talking about a little bit earlier of the nature of the team and kind of the way that they had to adapt to the cat of 3 difficulty to see them handling this end boss. And I remember they talked a little bit about too about just like handling the bosses and what have you. I think when we saw them, they were watching Hail Scourge, so this is the second boss battle that we've seen out of this team, and the second one that they kind of had to train around and learn around. But I see what you mean about the switching aggro here, Long, which is definitely kind of hardcore. Oh, what an unfortunate down right there. Good quick revive, though, so they're still in it.
Yeah, I mean, one thing as well is you'll notice that Battle Wizard is like insane on this event because you'll want to get caught a lot of times in the wall or something as the enemies trap you in. Battle Wizard ult absolutely will always be able to clear a path and kill the enemies at the same time. Great for getting reses and stuff too. Now, another thing as well is you'll notice that the team is sometimes this is a little cursed. Like ideally everyone's going the same direction in the kite, so you don't have two people kiting into each other and then colliding their boards, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I think, this isn't a very clean, perfect execution, but they're managing, right? So they're prioritizing their own survival. And it looks like they are able to kill Skerrick here. Very impressive kill. And they'll run to the end. It's, I don't want to jinx it, but it's, there's really not a whole lot between them and the Waystone right now. So I think they've really beaten the hardest part of the map. They should definitely be proud of themselves.
Yeah, I was gonna say not clean, but it kills a kill. So, they did it.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember my first time beating this event on Dwan's years ago. We were in the event for 25 minutes or something like that. And it was just clutch after survival fest after res, and somehow managed. I think we had a Hagbane Waystalker and a Battle Wizard, and we were just very, very slowly killing him. So
well, HK, you were about to cut in. I'm sorry. We were
Oh
busy
no,
trying
no,
about
it's
25-minute events, which just sounds hellish.
Yeah, I mean that particular fight was sub 7 minutes. I think it said 6 minutes and 52 seconds.
There you
So
go. Yep.
pretty awesome to be able to do that. Even though I mean the pressure is there, the mental pressure is there. You have two people at the moment were on death's door. Like you said, kiting is available, but still, nonetheless, you're like, I don't want to die. That's not necessarily in the cards. I don't want to play that way, if I don't have to. So, getting picked up. But yeah, I think you guys are right. They're going to be taking themselves to a victory here.
Yep, for sure. So very exciting to see.
Oh, good for them, and a good run there under the tutelage of Uvis. They're powering that one through. Switching back over to Johnny here and seeing where they're at as they fight their way through. What is this, Convocation? I think is what we're looking at.
Oh, Convocation is it's very different from Official Realm. So, now Convocation doesn't normally have a mid event, but in this mod it does. So, by the mid event, I mean the area where I think it's the second grim is, where you drop down through the hole into the large rectangular square room. In that room, normally it's just whatever ads are there, whatever horde you want to fight, etc. On Dwan's, though, you're going to get 3 bosses.
Right.
Not
Yes.
like that's. I'm not kidding. You'll get 3 bosses. So, I guess technically, oh yeah, someone's saying it's 2 mid events. Technically, the switches are also an event, but I don't think they're really like beefed up until like Dutch level, where it like the hordes are absolutely insane in the switch event. But anyways, yeah. So the triple bosses I think will be a really big highlight here. Very exciting. It'll be kind of like Twitch mode a little bit, but you know, definitely a bit harder. And I think their comp is like prepared for it. So you know, at least my analysis of this comp is that, you know, Bounty Hunter is obviously a great boss killer, and if he's getting strength pots from Grail Knight, he should be able to just like delete a boss in a very short amount of time. As you can see, it definitely spawns more enemies here in the switch area than normal.
Yeah.
And so he should be able to just cycle a boss in a short amount of time. Grell Knight, obviously, great boss killer, great elite killer, great for the tight areas of the map. So generally, a really strong career here and one that gives strength pots to the team. The Handmaiden, well, they are going to wipe, unfortunately, but I think the Handmaiden is functioning as like kind of a character that's just extremely survivable and self-sufficient. So they can probably, you know, take monster aggro and take it away from the team. And I can't remember what the last career was, but it looks like we're switching to a new stream here. So, oh, there we go. Ironbreaker.
I was gonna give you your chance to finish because you were giving us a good rundown there. I accidentally switched it up on you, but you can finish out. Let's see
No
let's hear what
worries.
you have to say.
So Ironbreaker with Trollhammer. Obviously, Trollhammer is amazing boss DPS and great for grabbing aggro bosses as well. But you also have Taunt, which is really big because in that event, it's not just bosses. Like you're eventually going to get a horde or an ambush or something like that. So Ivy can taunt that horde and give you just that much more time to, you know, burst down a boss or two and make the event easier. So
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's all very valid. It's always good to have kind of an analysis of the team comps, and obviously we've talked a lot with our various captains here today about how they sort of establish their team compositions and like what goes into that, and even having to kind of train players for roles in and of itself. I can't remember who it was that specifically said it, but it was really interesting, the idea that, you know, in regular gameplay, in particular like a quick play on Cataclysm or whatever, you are kind of in a position where you have to sort of feel like you have to do everything yourself. Like I think the cited example was sniping all the specials, but even if you're playing Foot Knight, whereas when you get to these higher difficulties, you really have to learn to kind of let the team do things, and it is a definite transition as somebody who's played a lot of regular difficulty, to kind of get away from the mentality of kind of I have to do everything to the mentality of like, oh yeah, you can actually trust people to get things done.
for sure. I mean, you know, what I told my team is that teams operate on trust, right?
Yes.
And like you're most effective when you have trust. And obviously, not 100% of the time are your teammates or you able to execute whatever your role truly was. And you might make mistakes, but you have to operate as if they're going to do it right.
We're gonna pull up Kiwi Cake here because they are on the Hail Scourge boss fight, so we'll see how they handle that. Unfortunately, we are getting towards the end of our day here. At least for today, we are going to obviously be back tomorrow, same time, same channel. Ishka will be leading things there as we take a look at a whole nother set of teams, and we have, I think, you know, just as many captains and teams ready to go, if not more. Just because we have really been really been seeing like a surge of signups. I think we were saying earlier we had like 120, 130, somewhere in that range of signups for this captain series. So people really fired up about being a part of this, which is great to see. And I hope those numbers are kind of reflected when we have our next tournament as well. The number of teams that we see participate as they get into the nitty gritty of this. I just saw one of those, what do you call them, biochemists wandering around there. So yeah,
Yep,
there they go.
biochemists. You can see them. They look like leeches, but they won't grab you. They instead push you. So they're anti-leeches, I guess. And the thing with biochemists, if you want some tips for this event, is they spawn from fixed locations and they actually walk for quite a long time before they teleport down into the arena and then try to kill you. So if you are a backliner and you memorize those spots, or at least are looking out for them, you should be able to kill them before they get the chance to act, and then it'll feel like as if there's no biochemists at all. Um, Now, one thing that I think this comp definitely has damage on Burbal's view and everything. I am a little concerned about sustain. I guess Warrior Priest definitely gives some sustain if he's running the heal talent, although I can't quite tell if he is. And I guess Barden could provide sustain if they're running the temp HP talent, although I also can't tell if they are. Um, and as you best said, sustain is really big because you're constantly being hit by these ghosts that are taking away your stamina and taking away your health. And like, there's definitely enemies to farm health on, but it's not. I would say you're more hard pressed for temp HP here than you normally are. So, they seem to be handling it pretty okay. Really going ham on Burble. They don't want to stay in this event very long. It seems like.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I mean they're putting a fair amount of damage, and you just saw that you're gonna see here on the stream in just a second. The Drill Knight absolutely laying into him. So they're doing their due diligence on that front. And the only thing is, like you guys were saying when we were talking about this event earlier, and then we mentioned the Scarrick event as well, and just a boss fights in general is it does stack up very quickly, right, and get kind of out of hand if you don't handle it right. But it does seem like they're managing this relatively well here.
For sure. I think they've been a bit on top of the spawns right now, and so the event looks easier than it is. I think they're making it look easy right now, because the arena's empty. They've done a good job of clearing the waves. They've done a good job of killing the chemists. So, all in all, it seems like a big success so far. This is C1, so it is like a little bit easier to clear that stuff up quickly, but certainly no joke. So, I think these players are demonstrating some event mastery right now so far. Hopefully, they're able to finish the job.
Yeah, I hope so, and we'll stick with them through this because I'd love to see kind of what they're able to do. I'll check and see where some of our other teams are at here. Maybe we'll be able to get one more boss fight in before we end here on the day. As we said, though, I mean nowhere close to kind of the end of this event, this captain series. We got plenty more action for you guys tomorrow, so I don't want anyone to think that we're tapping out here after just these 3 hours. But I'm sure these players they're probably ready to tap out.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I know I'd be exhausted after 3 hours of Vern, so even though that would be a small percentage of my total hours.
Well, yes, but the intensity, I think, is that's the key factor, right? So.
For sure, for sure. Looks like the wave's getting a little bit disorganized here, but they're managing. They certainly don't have any ammo issues. You can see there's tons of ammo in that corner there. Because killing the biochemist does trigger Barden's ammo drop. But yeah, I think pretty much got this. I think going over here is a little greedy, but
yeah, he wanted that.
Probably fine.
Super greed, but he's so close.
Greed kills, though.
So close.
Oh, they got him.
Ooh, are they running? It looks like they're running proxy.
Yeah, I think proxy is actually pretty standard on modded ROM. If you think about it in terms of like mathematical value, you're doubling the value of a potion generally. And with team coordination, you can make sure that like a strength proxy goes to someone else who needs it at a good time. There are some careers that run concoction. There are some careers that run, I forget what it's called, the one that extends the duration. But I would say in general, those careers have a very specific purpose for that. A good example is Battle Wizard generally runs concoction because when you're potting, you're not looking to do more burn damage. You're looking to get your ult back like right away. And you don't want to rely on getting a purple pot in order to do that. You also don't need multiple ults. You just need one, right? You just need like someone went down, you need to be able to res them safely. And so you pop the pot, go ult immediately, you kill everything because the pot gives you strength as well, res them, and then you're all good, right?
There you go.
That's a victory. GG.
GG. Nice
Happy to
work.
see
Nice
it.
work.
We're getting to see some wins here on
Yeah, exactly. It's good to see some wins.
Fairflu.
Yeah, Philo or
Fairflu.
whatever. Philo. I can't. I don't want to butcher the
Gargle fire
anymore.
flu. I can't. No, man.
Yes, this is probably one of the last things we'll see today. Is the bobbers, the bobers? Can't remember exactly.
Yeah, we'll see
The
if we can get
bobers,
the. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no worries. I was just gonna say that the Blight Reaper event is definitely beefed up a bit. So I might get it wrong for base C1 because I usually have played this event on Plus or Dutch or things that I think might be like changing the way the event works. So forgive me if I make an error here. But I believe you're going to get fixed waves every time you do part of the event. So every time you do like one of the books, you're going to get like a big wave or something like that, and they're fixed, so you know what the waves are. You'll have like a wave with a lot of armor. You'll have a wave with a lot of monks or something like that. But you'll also get bosses in that tiny little area. And so what I expect to see is that they will probably kite around the end event area in a circle when the boss comes up, or just trying to burst it down immediately because it's C1 and it has less health. So we'll see what they opt to do, but certainly, I think on Official Realm, you just kind of hit all the books, grab the sword, and go. And with this event, that's not really the case. And one thing that is very different is actually after you've done the event, it's really hard to get out of that room. Like, a lot spawns directly from the area that you're trying to escape to. So I've seen a lot of wipes happen actually after a successful event, just trying to get to the Waystone. So definitely a tough event, and we'll see how this team handles it.
Yeah, we're gonna in just a second. I think we're gonna get Kaizaki back in here to talk about the end event because it would be good to get the coach's perspective. But I think this would probably be the last thing that we're gonna see here today on the stream. So hopefully it's good. Let's go ahead and pull Kaizaki, get them in the room with us here. There we go. Hello, Kaizaki. Welcome back. We're about to do the end event, or hopefully, unless things go terribly, terribly wrong in the next few seconds, we're about to do the end event here in Blight Reaper. So, Lonk was just explaining some of the changes that are made to Blight Reaper or the end event from the regular kind of game. How did you sort of prep the team for this as we get ready to open the gate?
Yeah, so this was the hardest map they've got in the pool. And we tried a bunch of different comps for this one, and I gave them a few strats to try as well. But essentially, they developed their own strat. So first, we tried having Shade on the team so that they could stealth and go for the sword. And we also tried a very high damage team just holding in one spot for every wave until the last wave, and then they'd send one person to get the sword. And in the end, we have a kind of combination of those, except we don't have any stealth. So we've got this team comp is what some people call plus comp. It's a very safe combination. You have Sister lifting specials and Saltspire shooting them, whatever Sister can't shoot. And then the Ironbreaker Taunt and Grail Knight can take care of most of the armor damage. So I think what they're going to do is hold in the corner of the room for every wave apart from the last one. And then they're going to kite round in a loop and somebody's going to grab the sword.
Well, You make it sound very easy when you put it like that.
One
Okay
thing
then.
to note-
All right.
Yeah. Well, one
Let's
thing
see
to note
how-
is they did decide to change up the difficulty to C3 last minute, so they've actually played every map on C3. This is
Oh,
also
wow.
C3
Good
tomorrow.
Oh,
for them.
excellent, excellent.
They've done really well considering they've just last minute decided to make it harder for themselves. So we'll see how this event goes for them. They haven't beaten this event on C3 before though, so I hope they can pull it off.
So you can see a big wave here. Hold down in the corner. These stairs are very safe. They're kind of one of the common hold spots, mainly because the special angles are very controllable. Like you're not peaking a lot of angles at once, and the horde also generally funnels under the stairs. You have some places to run away to as you need. So far, I mean, Grelnade on 11 HP has me a little concerned, but seeming to hold in okay.
One thing they tried is a couple sort of micro kite loops they can do to just sort of reroute the highest density of enemies into a more controllable position. So sometimes they'll run up the stairs just to the top of the stairs and then drop back down into their spot. That's worked to save them a few times, and I think the biggest problem they had holding here is they would spread out too much and push to the right, which would draw aggro in from the right, coming down the stairs rather than from the front. And that meant when they needed to escape, they didn't have an escape route. But it looks like they're doing pretty well at sticking fairly tight here.
It's tough light coming in though, so they'll have to move.
Yeah, let's see what they do here. Oh, the sister wall comes up to stop the storm. That's a good play. Then they can hopefully move back to their spot.
Ooh. I see what you were saying about the Grail Knight being able to handle a lot of it on the front. Big lifts there from the Grail Knight. Not literal lifts like the sister, but keeping the team in it right there in that difficult spot. Is that that's another wave marked, I think?
Yeah, it looks like it. Definitely some strength pots are going off there, and the Xy's just going to keep swinging to get rid of as many elites as possible.
So you said this was the most difficult of the map in the pool. I'm just curious. So what did you start with? What was the first map you guys worked on? Or did you mention that earlier? I don't think you did.
So we did they did Bell, they did Kazukan, they did Into the Nest, and then Blight Reaper.
And then Blight Reaper, okay, yeah.
The Nest being the second hardest they had to deal with. But yeah, they beat that fair bit in practice.
Good. I mean, how are you feeling now? Where this is wave 4, I think, right? This is the last one.
They're doing really well right now. They're a little low on supplies, but they hopefully they'll get a strength bot and another 190 kills, I believe. So that's quite a while. But they still got a purple bot they can use and several heals. So I think they're doing well.
No, they're good. I know that you're slightly delayed, so I'm like reacting to things in real time. Unfortunately, it's gonna look a little bit grim in a minute. I must admit.
Oh no.
Yeah, I think that wave specifically spawns from multiple angles, and I think it throws a lot of teams off because they get used to holding in that corner, and then they're like, "Oh, wait, they're coming from all sides now." So I think this might be the end. Yeah, that's the end.
It is unfortunately the end.
Yeah.
That was a great attempt for sure. It's a very hard event, so
Yeah, they gave that a very good shot. They held out all the waves in that spot, apart from that last one.
They did.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much again, Kaizaki, for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'll go and congratulate my team anyway.
Yeah, they deserve it. They did well there.
Yeah, they worked hard.
Sure,
3 hours?
It's a long time. Well, guys, I think that's going to be probably the last thing we're going to see here today. So any final thoughts from you guys here as we come to the end of the first day here in the Captain Series broadcast?
For me, it's the go for it.
Please go ahead. No.
Both of you, come on. We're casual. We're casual. It's all good.
It's the accessibility of this. I think that's another reason why we have so many signups to this. But the amount of information that was not just put out there, here, go read this, but it's actually, we have the captains, we have the information, we can sit down and watch it, we can learn it, we can apply it, and at multiple different skill sets.
Right.
That to me, I think, is why we see so much interest. People want to play this, they want to push themselves, or maybe just get better is another word you could use. Either way, it's the accessibility, and through that we see so many people. So to me, that's awesome, and with that, it applies to the comps, the weapons, the skills, the talents, the trinkets, all these different decision makings. I love to see that.
For sure. I mean, I think Captain Series just kind of highlights how inviting the Verm community is. You know,
Definitely.
we don't care about your background or how you want to express yourself or whatever. Everyone's welcome here as long as they're respectful. And the goal is to, you know, educate people on how to fight rats better. And I know that even before Captain Series was a thing, the community was always like this. You know, when I joined the community a long time ago, I think they were always willing to like sit down with me and go over VODs or tell me tips or play with me or whatever. And I think that was kind of one of the biggest things that drew me to the Vern community way back. And seeing that manifest in a more official event like the Captain Series just feels awesome. You know, I wish Captain Series was around when I first started playing, but at the same time, I think I was kind of already getting it a little bit. And so, and it's kind of fun to see as well. I mean, just some history, right? Like, back when I first started, Slash was the one who like taught me how to do everything, and now we're both captains, right? You know, see like years later, right? You know, us contributing in a similar way, and I have a chance to give back, and it's these stories happen in modded. You know, I've been watching the community for some years, and seeing players develop is just a beautiful thing. It's also a very fun event, and you should definitely sign up for the next one if you are even on the fence about it, thinking about it, looking at the stream like, you know, maybe that would be fun. Maybe I'll meet some new people and be able to, you know, slay the rats with some experienced players and learn how to play it. Just do it. It's fun. It's a load of fun. And one thing I just want to end on is like, you should feel free to stick around in the community. So, you know, there's the Onslaught series server. There's also a Vermintide modded community server, which I'm sure someone in the chat will be able to share an invite link. And there's pub games that happen nearly every day. You know, hop in, get interested. We're here to chill and have a good time. And, you know, I think Onslaught series, Captain's event, day one is done. We still got another day of fun, but it's, you know, it's a beautiful thing. It's really emblematic of how inviting the community is. It's just great to see. I'm always really excited, you know.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's a great pitch there. I couldn't have said it better myself. So I hope everybody was listening. You can find the Discords are being linked here in the Twitch chat. There's also a Discord link to the Onslaught series Discord deeper down in the Twitch panels there. You can go take a look at that as well. But as was said, that will be the end here for us today. We're going to start the broadcast tomorrow. It'll be at noon Eastern time in the United States. Get things going there. Ishka will be hosting that one. Royale with Cheese will be joining. I think I will probably be there for that one as well. So plenty more action there. But a big thank you, of course, to all our captains who participated today. It was Johnny, Chance, Slash Keck, Kaizaki, Uvis, Kiwi Cake, Mr. Fluffy Dino, JC, and Altieri, and all your teams as well. We hope everybody enjoyed everything here today, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow for more of the Captain Series. But for now, from all of us here at Fight the Tide, thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful day.